Mill demanded half my salary and accused me of trapping her son when I announced my pregnancy. Am I the asshole for calling off the wedding and leaving? Gary, 30 million, and I, 28 feet, were set to get married next week, but after an odd talk with his mother, Linda, 55 feet, everything changed. I need help regarding my current circumstances because I feel totally lost. 2 years ago, Gary and I met at a birthday celebration through mutual acquaintances. Despite the fact that I was gregarious and extroverted and he was shy and introverted, we clicked right away. In contrast to my commercial profession, Gary was a kind high school teacher who cherished his kids. I like Gary's shyness and his tendency to keep to himself, even though we met at a party. He was just being himself, in contrast to other guys who made an effort to impress me. After 6 months of dating, our relationship took a serious turn. After spending a lot of time together, we began discussing moving in together. At that point, Linda, Gary's mother, proposed that we move in with them in order to save money for the future. Gary, who had always lived with his parents and didn't see anything wrong with it, was totally on board. Although I appreciated my independence, I was apprehensive, but the financial consideration made sense. Linda claimed that it would be more cost-effective for us to live in the large 5-bedroom home she and her husband Tom occupied. I moved in, reluctantly giving up my flat. Linda first came across as quite kind. She included me in family activities and prepared our favorite dishes every time. She was a mother who stayed at home and took delight in caring for her family. Tom, her spouse, was a construction worker, although he was seldom present and hardly talked. Linda was in charge of the home and made all the choices. In fact, the first few months of living there were enjoyable. Linda handled all of the cooking, cleaning, and laundry. I worked hard at my job and needed to relax when I got home, so she wouldn't even let me help. Gary and I made a small contribution toward groceries and utilities, but it was insignificant in comparison to what I had previously spent. Gary and I became closer after we moved in together, and we began discussing getting married. Gary used his grandmother's ring to pop the question on my birthday last year. Linda took up the wedding arrangements right away, seemingly ecstatic about the engagement. She seemed so happy that I agreed with all of her many suggestions. Everything appeared to be going according to plan until last Thursday, when we decided to have the wedding the next week. Linda wanted to talk about something significant regarding the wedding, so she asked to have coffee with me alone. I thought it had to do with last-minute plans or a custom in the family. During my lunch hour, we met at a cafe close to my workplace. Following a brief conversation about wedding planning, she abruptly made an odd request. She informed me that I would have to deposit half of my monthly income into her account after we were married. I was totally taken aback and perplexed. She explained that it was for Gary's and my financial stability when I questioned why. I've already talked to Gary about it, and he agreed, she said. What I was hearing was unbelievable. She decided to bring this up a week before the wedding, even though I had been living with them for over a year and had been organizing it for months. After telling her that I needed some time to consider it, I walked out of the cafe. I had so many questions running through my head. Why hadn't Gary brought this up earlier? Given that we were already helping with household expenses, why would she want my money? I questioned Gary about it when I got home that night. After becoming somewhat anxious, he eventually acknowledged that his mother had discussed this with him a month prior. She had warned him that we would not be allowed to reside in her home after marriage if we didn't accept her conditions. Gary explained that he kept it from me because he was afraid we would have to move out and we weren't yet able to afford our own house after all the wedding-related costs. The fact that Gary withheld this information from me for a month upset me. We had always told one another the truth about everything. We would speak things out even if we didn't agree. This seemed like a total breach of confidence. Gary said that his mother only had our best interests in mind, but I failed to see how withdrawing half of my pay was beneficial to us. I've been feeling anxious about the whole affair because Gary and I are the only ones who know that I'm 2 months pregnant. We were glad of it even if it wasn't planned. After the baby was born, we had agreed that I would temporarily leave my job to care for our child. Gary had been in favor of this choice, and we had begun budgeting appropriately. He obviously hadn't discussed any of this with his mother though. I haven't yet informed my parents about Linda's request because they reside in another state. I don't want to worry them because they had spent a lot of money on this wedding. My best buddy suggests that I speak with Linda once more in an effort to better comprehend her viewpoint, but I must admit that I'm afraid to confront her by myself. 7 days remain till the wedding, and I'm at a loss. Gary continues telling me that I should just accept Linda's terms for the time being and that I'm overreacting. I think this is only the beginning, but he says we can work anything out later. What else will she demand if she is making these demands prior to marriage? And I start to doubt everything because Gary kept this from me for a month. I need guidance. Am I reacting too strongly to this circumstance? Since we need a place to live, should I just accept her requirements or should I refuse to back down and run the danger of destroying our relationship? First update. I made the decision to speak with Linda once again and inform her about the pregnancy after reading all of your comments. Some indicated that she might change her mind about the entire pay issue if she knew about her impending grandchild. In retrospect, I see how foolish I was to believe that. Because I didn't feel comfortable talking to Linda by myself again, I wanted Gary to be there. He excused himself by saying he had extra lessons at school and had to stay back when I told him this morning that I was going to notify Linda about the pregnancy. Since it's spring break, I thought it was strange, but I didn't press the issue. After Linda finished preparing dinner yesterday evening, I ended up meeting her by myself in her kitchen. As usual, Tom was in the living room watching TV. Totally unaware of anything going on in the home. Despite my nervousness, I made the decision to end it now. I began by informing her that I had some significant news to share with her. I was expecting her granddaughter, who was 2 months along. I thought she would at least show a little excitement or joy, but she had the exact opposite reaction. She yelled so loudly that I'm sure the neighbors could hear her as her cheeks flushed with rage. She accused me of deceiving her son with this pregnancy and called me manipulative. She claimed that I had orchestrated the entire incident to damage their family's reputation. I was taken aback because Gary and I had lived in their home for 2 years together and were being married in less than a week. Was anyone being trapped by this pregnancy? She went utterly crazy when I told her that I was going to quit my job when the kid was delivered. She began to pace the kitchen and said that since they required my pay for household necessities, she would not allow me to resign. She dropped a bombshell when I reminded her that I had never committed to pay her my wage in the first place. She informed me that months prior to his proposal, Gary had already promised her my pay. I had the impression that I had been punched in the stomach. Gary had been cooperating with her intentions all along and was aware of them. But Linda wasn't finished. She continued to talk about how my unintended pregnancy had ruined everything. She claimed that she was only permitting our marriage because I made a nice living and that she saw no need in the wedding now that I intended to resign from my position. I immediately called Gary, but he didn't answer. Despite my repeated attempts to call, the call went directly to voicemail. When he eventually got home at around 9 p.m., I waited for him to do so, and Linda filled him in on everything. I thought he would defend me and our child, but he chose to support his mother. He suggested that I should have used birth control more carefully and that my desire to resign from my work was causing needless turmoil. It was unbelievable to me that this was the same Gary who, only a few days prior, had been thrilled about the baby, who had even begun researching baby names online and had helped me cope with morning sickness. He seemed to be a totally different person when his mother was there. Gary slept on the couch as I sobbed in our room all night. He never once came to see how I was doing, even at that point. When I tried to speak with him again this morning before he left for school, he suggested that I either accept his mother's demands or put off the wedding until we could work things out. He didn't even admit that his mother had treated me rudely or that, because of our child, she had essentially threatened to call off our wedding. As I give it more thought, I see that Gary has never really challenged his mother on any issue. He advised me to dress more modestly when she made comments about my attire. He said she was merely attempting to assist when she rearranged our room without asking. He suggested I should be thankful she was doing all the work when she altered our wedding arrangements without telling me. He constantly told me to change or offered justifications for her actions. I contacted my mother and told her everything since I was at my breaking point. She was so angry that she promised to get me a plane home right away. I pleaded with her not to exacerbate the situation by coming here herself to confront Linda. To help me decompress, she invited me to come stay with her for a few days and pack some clothing. This is being typed from my mother's home. Gary claims that I'm being dramatic and hormonal due to the pregnancy, and he has been phoning and messaging me nonstop. He argues that by departing in this manner, I'm embarrassing him and that I should return home to make amends with his mother for causing her distress. My mother believes that I should give this marriage a lot more thought. She claims that if Linda is making such demands prior to marriage and Gary is unable to resist her at this time, things will only worsen once they are married. She is concerned about how they will handle the baby and me. I'm not sure if the wedding should take place at all, and it's in 5 days. I can't help but think of how fast Gary changed when he had to decide between me and his mother. When she starts making more demands after marriage, what will happen? Will my child witness their father consistently picking their grandmother above their mother as they grow up? Second update. I canceled the wedding. I eventually found the strength to make this tough choice after spending 2 days at my mom's house contemplating everything. Gary unexpectedly came up at my mom's place the night after I posted my last update. My mother had gone to fetch groceries, so she wasn't home. At first, I believed he had come to express regret or at least, to try to comprehend my perspective. Rather, he began scolding me about how staying at my mom's house was embarrassing him and his family. He claimed that family members had begun to phone and inquire as to why I wasn't home, and he wasn't sure how to respond. His demeanor only exacerbated the morning nausea I was already experiencing. I informed him up front that unless he defied his mother and agreed with my choice about the child, I would not marry him. I saw his true colors in his remark. We needed a place to live, so he suggested that if I truly cared about our child, I would continue working and give his mother what she desired. He said he wasn't going to leave his parents' house because I was being difficult when I proposed that we rent a tiny apartment instead. I realized then that Gary would never change. He would be his mother's puppet forever. I returned my engagement ring to him after taking it off. He became irate and accused me of selfishness and self-centeredness. I understood the irony of what he was saying. I questioned him about how he could allow his mother to treat his child's mother in such a disrespectful manner. He insisted that I was overreacting even though he had no response. I began phoning all of our guests to cancel things the following morning, my hands shaking. 3 days before the wedding was scheduled, it was embarrassing to have to tell everyone why it was canceled. While some were judgmental, others were understanding. My parents helped me deal with all the vendors and cancellations and were really encouraging. The actual drama began at that point. Linda, the head of Gary's family, began circulating rumors among our acquaintances. I called off the wedding because they told everyone I had cheated on Gary. They claimed that I was deceiving Gary about the pregnancy. In fact, some common acquaintances who had known us for years took them at face value and ceased communicating with me. I started getting angry messages from Linda. She claimed that I had destroyed her son's life and that she would see to it that I felt bad about my choice. She started making up new social media profiles to torment me, and I blocked her number when she threatened to report my unstable behavior to my employer. In the end, I blocked their whole family. Gary kept attempting to reach me at several numbers. Occasionally, when he was upset, he would accuse me of being selfish. At other times, he would beg, stating we could resolve the issue, but he never confronted his mother or expressed regret for keeping things from me. While Gary and Linda were at a family gathering, my mother assisted me in moving all of my belongings out of their home. Tom was present, but he did nothing but observe in silence while we packed everything. However, his assistance in carrying several boxes to the car was perhaps the most involvement he had ever showed in a family matter. I feel like I can breathe for the first time in weeks now that I'm back at my mom's house. Although some people are criticizing me for being unmarried and pregnant, I would much rather be a single mother than be forced to live in a marriage where my husband and his mother run my entire life. Surprisingly, my employer has been sympathetic to my plight. After I told my manager about it, she made arrangements for me to work from home because I've been experiencing severe morning sickness. At least I haven't yet had to deal with my coworkers' inquiries. I squandered 2 years with someone who couldn't decide between his mother and his unborn child, and that's the only thing that hurts. Even though it was a tough choice, I know it was the right one. My child deserves better than a grandmother who treats them like a bother and a father who is incapable of advocating for them. Third update. Since my last update, everything in my life has changed drastically. Last month, I gave birth to Emma, my gorgeous baby girl. Both physically and emotionally, the pregnancy was challenging. During the last trimester, I experienced high blood pressure and terrible morning sickness. My mother was incredible. In order to support me during the last few months of my pregnancy and the initial weeks following delivery, she took a 3-month leave of absence from her employment. Through some mutual connections, Gary learned of Emma's birth. The day after I gave birth, he and Linda arrived at the hospital. Only my family was permitted to visit, as I had made clear on my admissions paperwork. Linda made quite a commotion in the hospital lobby when the nurses intervened. She was yelling about my deprivation of her son's child and her rights as a grandma. They had to be escorted out by hospital security. After this episode, my doctor was worried about my blood pressure and kept me under monitoring for an additional day. Gary's attorney called me regarding custody arrangements a week after we returned home from the hospital. Linda had been writing on Facebook about filing a lawsuit, so I wasn't shocked. We're now working out the custody details, and I have my own lawyer. According to my lawyer, Gary's petition for 50-50 custody is improbable because he never offered any support during my pregnancy. I benefit from the fact that we have records of Linda's hospital harassment and all of her threatening texts. 2 months ago, something unexpected happened. Gary's calm father, Tom, paid me a secret visit. He claimed to have wanted to speak with me for months, yet he appeared anxious. He told me something startling and expressed regret for not speaking up sooner. 5 years prior, Linda had done similar things to Gary's ex-girlfriend Sarah. Although Sarah left Gary before to the engagement, she had insisted on receiving a portion of her inheritance. Tom claimed that although Linda had threatened to divorce him if he meddled in family affairs, he had wished to warn me. Last week, I started a new job. With a 30% pay increase, it's actually a better job than the one I had before. Emma's management is greatly aided by the company's excellent maternity benefits and flexible scheduling. While I'm at work, my mom has been fantastic with the baby. It offers her something to look forward to each day, she claims. Linda hasn't given up yet. She makes fictitious social media profiles in order to reach me and make offensive remarks about me. She even made an attempt to get in touch with my new employer, but fortunately, my manager was sympathetic to the circumstance. After hearing Tom's side of the story, a few of our mutual acquaintances who had first accepted their lies apologized, but I'm avoiding contact with anyone associated with that family. I return every gift that Gary sends Emma. He sent us a giant teddy bear last week along with a statement expressing how much he missed us. I sent it with a message requesting that he only speak with our attorneys. I refuse to allow him or his mother to use presents and kind words to re-enter our life. Emma deserves better than a father who was unable to defend her before she was even born and a grandmother who views her as a problem. Unless there is a significant development in the custody case, I doubt I will be updating again. In retrospect, I'm so happy I followed my gut and called off the wedding. Sometimes breaking up with someone right before marriage is preferable to being in a dominating marriage where you lose your independence and dignity. Emma is currently waking up from her slumber. I want to express my gratitude to everyone for clearing my confusion 6 months ago. Even when life isn't perfect, what matters most is that we're happy. Golden child sister canceled my flight, took a family vacation without me, but her manipulations finally caught up to her. I, 28F, am employed as a paralegal at one of the leading legal practices in San Francisco that focuses on civil litigation and family law. I find it ironic that as I cope with my own family drama, I spend my days painstakingly recording evidence for family disagreements. I assist lawyers in constructing cases against manipulative family members who take advantage of and misuse their relatives' trust on a daily basis. I've gotten really excellent at identifying manipulation patterns and obtaining proof, which will soon prove to be more useful to me personally than I could have ever imagined. Let me tell you a little about myself. My parents have always regarded Olivia, my younger sister, who is 23F, as their miracle kid. Before Olivia was born, my mom had suffered 3 terrible miscarriages, and the agony of those losses almost caused their marriage to fail. For them, Olivia became a symbol of rebirth and optimism when she eventually appeared. Every time she walked into the room, my dad, 56M, a typically quiet high school teacher, would light up. My 54-year-old mother, who owns a small bakery, referred to her as their angel on earth. At first, I understood. Overprotection can result from trauma. I was 5 years old when Olivia was born, and I had seen my parents go through a difficult time. I could see why they showered her with attention. My parents didn't see, or didn't want to see, how Olivia turned their adoration into a weapon. Even the most seasoned attorneys I deal with would be impressed by her remarkable ability to manipulate emotions. As a child, Olivia demonstrated a superb ability to turn any circumstance to her favor. She knew exactly how to manipulate our parents like a fiddle, and her victim act was worthy of an Oscar. She began manipulating me in minor ways, accusing me of pushing her when she fell, which I never did, blaming me for broken toys, and making herself weep whenever I received attention. However, her strategies grew increasingly cunning and vicious as we grew older. One instance that truly reveals her actual nature comes to mind. Our grandma gave me this vintage pocket watch, which has been in the family for many generations, on my 16th birthday. Our great-great-grandfather, who moved from Ireland, owned the exquisitely built watch from the 1890s, which had withstood 2 world wars. For me, the story behind it was everything. Despite receiving a brand new iPhone as a special gift, Olivia pitched a fit because she wanted it too. Remember, this was back when iPhones were still popular. She chose to discipline me when I refused to share it because, after all, it was a birthday present. She sneaked into my room later that night and placed a giant house spider in my pillowcase since she knew I was afraid of spiders because of an event at summer camp when I was a kid. Olivia was the ideal choice to play the worried sister when I woke up screaming and had something crawling on my face. She even succeeded in giving my parents the impression that she had come to my aid right away. Only later, when we were by ourselves, did she confess what she had done, flashing that smug look I had been so accustomed to. A week later, the watch vanished inexplicably. I knew Olivia had taken it, even though we never discovered evidence. She went on the defensive when I accused her, saying that I was jealous of her new iPhone and was only attempting to harm her. The watch never appeared, and I was grounded for a week by my parents for making false accusations. Then there came my junior year, when I had my first serious crush on a man named Jason. We had been studying together for months when he was in my AP chemistry class. I finally had the bravery to ask him to a movie. I spent hours choosing the ideal ensemble, which included a brand new blue dress that I had been saving for months at my part-time job at the neighborhood library. Olivia accidentally spilled her grape juice all over it as soon as Jason entered. She amused him with uncomfortable tales from my early years, such as a particularly embarrassing instance from a school performance in which I had stage fright and became wet myself, while I was upstairs getting changed. I was 6 years old. The entire atmosphere was destroyed by the time I returned downstairs in my backup attire. Olivia had somehow made herself the focus of attention, and Jason could hardly look at me. Jason changed his study partner the following day, and I never heard from him again. She ruined more than just my social life though. Just hours before the due date, Olivia accidentally erased my almost completed common application essay from our shared family computer when I was applying to colleges in my senior year. The hurried version likely cost me admission to a number of prestigious universities, and I had to spend the entire night revising it. Maybe you should have saved a backup copy. Isn't that what smart people do? She simply shrugged when I challenged her. This trend persisted during our adolescence. My mom would always add, "You know how sensitive she is after everything we went through to have her." No matter how I tried to explain Olivia's behavior to our parents, they would dismiss it with a remark like, "She's just young," or, "You need to be more understanding of your sister." I eventually gave up trying. What was the purpose? I was merely the one who caused trouble by speaking up, and Olivia was their best child. Despite being an English teacher who takes great satisfaction in his ability to analyze critically, my dad lost his sight of Olivia. All day long, he would point out deceit and manipulation in Shakespeare's characters to his students, but he was unable to recognize the same trends occurring in his own household. Even worse was my mother. Being Olivia's mother had essentially become her entire identity, as though Olivia's most recent accomplishments, the majority of which I subsequently learned she had lied about or stolen credit for from others, were more significant than her own prosperous bakery business. I was eager to get out of that house by the age of 18. I concentrated on my studies, was accepted to a reputable college across the nation, and left right away. In order to avoid having to approach my parents for money, I worked 2 jobs. As a research assistant and at the college library. I understood that any financial dependence would offer Olivia grounds to criticize me. It was refreshing to go to college. For the first time, I could be myself without Olivia constantly putting me down. However, she made it plain that I wasn't welcome whenever I returned home during breaks, which got fewer and farther between. She would ignore me during meals, snoop through my belongings while I wasn't looking, and cut me off in any conversation I attempted to have with our parents. She even once accessed private customer files on my work laptop, which may have led to my termination if someone had discovered it. How did she react when I challenged her? Our parents, as usual, just shrugged and said, "You shouldn't have left it lying around." They also advised us to get along. After that, I started staying in school or spending my breaks with friends instead of going home. After dedicating myself to my studies, I finished with honors and immediately enrolled in law school. Even my law school graduation was skipped because Olivia had a slight cold and needed them. My parents seemed to be okay with my absence, justifying it as me becoming independent. I am currently 28 years old and have established a prosperous profession as a paralegal at one of the leading law companies in San Francisco. The irony that I spend my days recording the betrayals of other people's families while attempting to forget my own is not lost on me. I specialize in family court matters. Over the past 5 years, I haven't really interacted with Olivia much, only having polite, quick conversations around significant holidays, when I bothered to show up at all. With sporadic phone conversations and generic birthday cards, my connection with my parents grew more and more strained. Then, when my dad suffered a near-fatal heart attack a few months ago, everything changed. I threw everything down and ran home when my mother called to tell me. I was on the next trip home after she uttered my name with an urgency I had never heard before. "Madison, please come. He's asking for you." Her words broke through years of bitterness. Dad was stabilized and lived, but he was badly shaken by the event. As I observed him battling with the several tubes and monitors connected to him during one of our conversations in the hospital, he expressed his desire to spend more time with his loved ones. He said, "Life's too short," in a voice that was weaker than I had ever heard. In addition to recommending lifestyle modifications like regular exercise, the doctors had prescribed a rigorous pharmaceutical schedule. My throat constricted as he spoke about second chances and regrets. I chose to stay for a few days because I could see his point of view. Perhaps since I hadn't taken a sick day in 5 years and had accumulated enough goodwill to last a lifetime, my employer was unexpectedly kind. I could work from home, conducting research and preparing documents from my former bedroom. But my return to the house did not sit well with Olivia. She demonstrated this by moving my laptop during client calls, playing loud music while I was attempting to work, and accidentally unplugging my monitor during crucial video conferences, among other tiny acts of violence. Then one morning at breakfast, Dad suggested that the family go on a trip. He added in a voice full of enthusiasm, "It's been years since we all went somewhere together," reminding me of the father I knew before Olivia seized control of our lives. He wanted to travel to Hawaii, which we had discussed going to when I was younger, before Olivia, before the miscarriages, before everything changed. At first, I was hesitant because hanging out with Olivia for a long period wasn't really exciting. Knowing how much it meant to Dad, though, I consented. During that brunch, I noticed hope in his eyes, something I hadn't seen in years. Although Olivia seemed more interested in eating nails than going on a trip with me, she was unable to refuse Dad's proposition while he was still recuperating from a heart attack. He booked flights and lodging, taking care of everything. I made sure everything was in order, asked for time off, and even prepared case papers ahead of time to make sure nothing would stop me from going. However, I learned that my flight had been inexplicably canceled when we arrived at the airport. I felt angry and perplexed. We went to the airline desk to find out what had happened because Dad insisted he had purchased and paid for all 4 tickets. Only my ticket had been denied, I thought as I looked at Olivia. It was the same sneaky smile I'd seen so many times before, the one she'd worn after the spider incident, after she'd ruined my date with Jason, after she'd gained every little triumph over me. I went straight up to her. I said, "You did this, didn't you?" Mom leapt to Olivia's support. "Your sister would never do something like that." Dad then made an effort to make things better. "It's probably just an airline error. Let's not point fingers." As she mentioned that my ticket had been canceled yesterday from my parents' home IP address while I was at work, the airline lady appeared uneasy. I was taken aback. Since there were no other flights that day, it didn't seem like a good idea to fly alone the following day. They still refused to accept Olivia as she truly was, despite all the evidence that pointed to her. After hesitating and speculating that they might postpone and reschedule, Dad began to talk about how long it had been since he had taken a holiday, how the doctors had warned that stress was harmful for his heart, and that perhaps it would be best to keep quiet. Mom remarked, "You travel so much for work anyway," without looking at me. "You're not really missing out." Their remarks hurt. To once again prioritize Olivia's comfort over my involvement in the family, they appeared to be requesting permission to depart without me. "You're welcome to go without me," I remarked in a cold tone as I made my way back to San Francisco, determined to move on from the entire situation. I had no idea that Olivia's reputation as a golden child would ultimately bring about her demise. Something changed inside of me as I stood alone in the airport watching my parents and Olivia board their aircraft. I learned the value of paperwork, case building, and waiting for the proper opportunity during my years of paralegal employment. For years, I had been surreptitiously gathering proof of Olivia's manipulation, including witness statements from former classmates and neighbors, emails, texts, and security camera footage. It was time to exploit my professional expertise for my own benefit. In that airport terminal, I decided to stop being the understanding elder sister. No more ignoring the situation. The culmination of years of gathering evidence of Olivia's deceptive actions was imminent, and she wouldn't even anticipate it. I knew better than anyone because I worked as a paralegal. The truth always comes out in the end, and I would be prepared when it did. First update. I never thought my mother would call me in such a frenzy so quickly. As I listened to her frantic voice describe what had transpired at their Hawaii resort, my hands began to shake. Their flawed family vacation had devolved into a nightmare that would ultimately reveal Olivia's true character. It started when Dad's heart medicine started to inexplicably stop working. After 3 days of closely monitoring his medication, my parents discovered that 3 to 4 pills per day were routinely disappearing. Initially, they thought he was misplacing his pills or taking them without remembering, which was a worrying but reasonable explanation considering his recent health problems. My father insisted on looking everywhere in their suite, but at first my mother didn't accept the obvious implications. Nothing was discovered until my mother was at the pool and went to borrow sunscreen from Olivia's room. All of Dad's missing heart pills were in Olivia's bedside drawer, as was his backup prescription bottle, which had reportedly been misplaced during packing. Olivia didn't even attempt to refute it when pressed. "You shouldn't have invited her in the first place," she yelled, alluding to their original plan to include me. Because this trip was supposed to be about us, the real family. Instead, she launched into a diatribe about how I had ruined their perfect family vacation. Things quickly got out of hand. Olivia started flinging objects around the hotel room, breaking multiple glasses and a lamp. She reacted angrily to my father's attempts to soothe her, accusing him of being weak for attempting to reintroduce that drama into their lives and claiming that his heart attack was really a ploy to get attention. When hotel security received complaints about the noise, they weren't impressed by Olivia's performance, unlike when our parents were there. When she refused to stop and started saying that everyone would pay, the hotel staff phoned the police. As my mother explained how she was handcuffed and brought away, I could hear her yelling in the background. She kept saying it was all your fault. My mother wept on the phone. But Madison, she could have killed your father. Those medications, he needs them. The doctor said even missing a single day could trigger another heart attack. I remained calm and professional. I had learned how to maintain my composure in the face of internal turmoil via years of handling high-stress legal circumstances. I gave the order, "Mom, I need you to do exactly what I say. Take photos of where you found the medication. Document everything. Use your phone to record any conversations with hotel staff or police. Don't delete anything Olivia sends you." The voice of my mother broke. "The police want to press charges. They're saying it's attempted domestic assault or something. Should we get her a lawyer?" "No," I firmly said. "Let me handle everything from here." This was the kind of thing I had been planning. Olivia was taken out of custody 24 hours later, but her freedom would not last long. In her room, the police had discovered more than just cardiac medication. They also found a number of stolen goods, such as cell phones and wallets, from other hotel visitors. While our parents were at the beach or pool, she had been methodically breaking into other rooms. Olivia wasn't finished though. As soon as she got back to the hotel, she started planning her retaliation. She essentially left our parents stranded in Hawaii without access to cash or identity by hiding their wallets and passports. Her message was unmistakable. She would ensure that everyone suffered alongside her if she were going down. I started working with the hotel security personnel right once and made arrangements for emergency monies to be supplied via Western Union. As soon as I described the problem, they were unexpectedly supportive. As it happens, Olivia was already under suspicion by the hotel for acting strangely around the rooms of other visitors. When she was seen trying to enter the hotel's medical storage facility, which had emergency cardiac drugs, on security tape, it was the last straw. She claimed she was only seeking for aspirin when staff confronted her, but the keypad's access log revealed several unsuccessful attempts to enter a restricted location. As I was coordinating with the hotel security staff and local law enforcement that evening, Olivia began sending me more bizarre texts. She said that during her prior snooping, she had obtained private information from my laptop and threatened to disclose it to my company. She was unaware that years prior, I had already reported and documented her unauthorized access attempt to the security team at my company. The truth was shattering my parents, who were finally recognizing Olivia for who she truly was. Dad's blood pressure was dangerously high due to the stress, and Mom was crying uncontrollably. While the court case started, I made arrangements for them to relocate to a separate hotel far from Olivia. During our most recent phone conversation, my father observed, "We ought to have paid attention to you years ago." I had never heard his voice sound older and more worn out. "We couldn't realize we were losing you instead because we were so terrified of losing her." Olivia is currently being investigated by the police. She faces severe charges based on my documenting of her prior actions as well as the recently obtained hotel proof. Karma can occasionally operate through the legal system. Second update. Since my last report, things have drastically become worse. Olivia was released on bail after being charged with several counts of stealing and reckless endangerment, with the stipulation that she must return to our parents' home and attend required mental health assessments. But what transpired next demonstrated that things were much worse than any of us had thought. Olivia transformed our parents' home into a psychological battleground without expressing any regret. She started by methodically deleting family pictures, but just those that featured me. Olivia said she was cleaning the house of negative energy when Mom questioned her about it. Then, in the middle of the night, she started moving all the furniture around, making loud noises that kept our parents from falling asleep. When she began to interfere with Dad's new medicine schedule, the true risk became evident. He would miss doses or take them at the wrong times because she would alter the time on every clock in the house. She pretended to be innocent when apprehended, saying she was only trying to help organize things better. Any change to his pharmaceutical regimen could result in another cardiac episode, the physicians had cautioned. While officially remaining within the law, Olivia came up with inventive methods to ruin our parents' lives, so I promptly filed for an emergency restraining order. At night, she would stand quietly in their bedroom doorway and watch them attempt to go asleep, or she would play music that was precisely 1 decibel below the noise regulation limit. When Dad found out that the brake lines on his automobile had been tampered with, it was the tipping point. The mechanic verified that the damage was deliberate, but we were unable to identify Olivia. She accidentally ignited a minor fire in the kitchen at 3 a.m. that same day while cooking. My dad called me crying. "We can no longer live this way, Madison. My blood pressure is skyrocketing, and your mother hasn't slept in days. However, she is our daughter. How could we have let her down so severely?" I made arrangements for Olivia to be evaluated by a mental evaluation team using my legal connections. Instead of cooperating, she launched into a thorough conspiracy theory about how I had planned everything, including the hotel mishaps and Dad's heart attack, to turn our parents against her. The initial assessment from the evaluation team was unsettling. They observed a total lack of empathy and extreme narcissistic characteristics, pointing to a pattern of behavior that had probably been growing for years. Olivia would either deny everything or defend it as essential for protecting her family from my influence when I showed her the evidence of her behavior. The process has been a nightmare, but our parents have finally consented to formally evict her. She has been methodically wrecking the house by punching holes in the walls, ruining appliances, and shredding documents. She asserts that the house would never feel the same without her and says she is marking her territory. Things took a far darker turn last night. During one of her subsequent 3 a.m. eventually, she wrote resignation letters to the principal of his school and gained access to Dad's email account. Claiming to be helping them simplify their lives, she then went on to cancel all of their utility and credit card bills. The police are called in once more, but Olivia seemed to enjoy operating just outside the law. It is difficult to make a case for her quick removal since she is aware of the limits of her influence before going beyond established legal bounds. I've been painstakingly recording everything in an effort to compile a case that should lead to both required mental health treatment and criminal prosecution. My years of experience as a paralegal are coming in very handy. Every event, text message, and item of property damage is being recorded and validated. Since they are unable to go back to their own house, our parents are currently lodging at a motel. Mom's voice was hollow when she called me yesterday. We never realized we needed to protect the world from her because we spent so many years protecting her from the world. Next week is the date of the eviction hearing in court. Although Olivia is unaware of it yet, I have gathered proof of financial fraud she has perpetrated over the previous few years using our parents' information. I've been planning for years because sometimes the best defense is a well-prepared offense. Third update. Nobody could have predicted how dramatically the final meeting with Olivia would unfold. She went from using psychological warfare to open criminal action after being served with the official eviction notice. She planned what I can only characterize as a deliberate attempt to demolish everything our family had worked so hard to create 3 days prior, on what would be her last night at our parents' house. She gained access to Dad's retirement funds and tried to move the whole amount to an offshore account she had covertly opened. Fortunately, it was discovered in time by the bank's fraud detection system. After that failed, she started methodically destroying priceless family relics, including Dad's collection of first edition books from his teaching career, our great-grandmother's wedding china, and photo albums from the 1940s. All of them were purposefully destroyed. She even claimed to be cleaning the house of generational trauma, while live-streaming portions of her outburst on social media. When she found out about the covert camera system I had lawfully built with our parents' consent to record her activities, the issue reached a breaking point. She reacted violently and instantly. Screaming that she would sooner burn the house down than allow them to win, she snatched up a kitchen knife and began slicing furniture. I was asked to disclose the extensive evidence file I had put together by the police negotiator. It included years' worth of documented incidents, including surveillance footage from the house demonstrating her deliberate destruction of property, financial documents demonstrating systematic theft from our parents' accounts, and medical records demonstrating her meddling in Dad's medical care. Olivia was finally arrested following a 4-hour standoff. The police's discovery that she had been using several false identities during her booking, however, was the true shock. She has reportedly been using similar strategies to con other families, posing as a distant cousin in need of assistance or a long-lost relative. Currently, the district attorney is pursuing several felonies, including identity theft, criminal threats, criminal destruction of property, and attempted financial fraud. The foundation of their argument is now the evidence I have accumulated over the years. Last thoughts. While they deal with everything, our parents are living with me in San Francisco. Just the 3 of us had our first genuine family meal in years yesterday. I keep thinking about all the signs we ignored, all the times Madison tried to tell us. Mom sobbed during dessert. We were so caught up in the idea of not losing her that we never realized we were losing ourselves, said Dad, who has now begun to recover his health now that he is no longer influenced by Olivia. During the police search, the vintage pocket watch that Olivia had stolen years prior was discovered among her belongings. I'm reminded that all realities come to light in due time as I hold it and listen to its steady tick. My dad handed it to me last night and said, "It should have been yours all along." Going forward, we're concentrating on family healing, the genuine sort, based on openness and respect for one another rather than coercion and terror. The person who ought to have been closest to you is sometimes the most difficult to eliminate out of your life. However, we've discovered that a smaller, healthier family is preferable to a larger, toxic one. I appreciate all of your help and guidance during this trip. When things got hard, your remarks kept me going. We are especially grateful to the community's legal experts who provided advice. You are truly remarkable. My parents sued me for cutting off contact and tried to drag me back into their drama. Their manipulation led to a court battle. I got my friend's sister pregnant, but she lied about it. My parents disowned me, but now that they know the truth, they are pleading with me. Okay, so here's the thing. I need to get this off my chest because my life became a total wreck around a year ago. Let me begin at the beginning because, believe me, this is one of those situations where you're just like, seriously, what the hell? I never imagined that I'd be here sharing this on Reddit, but I suppose that's what happens when your family goes crazy and you're left standing there, wondering, how did this even happen? My friend Dave has a sister named Jenny. Both of them have been in my life for years. It's nothing big, is it? We all grew up in the same area and occasionally hang out. Jenny was never quite like the others. I don't mean to come across as cruel, but she was dealing with some mental health issues. To be honest, it wasn't my business, and I don't know all the specifics. Everyone knew Jenny struggled, but Dave never mentioned it much and I didn't ask. In any case, Jenny unexpectedly called me a year ago to tell me she was pregnant. All okay, that's cool. With the exception of one little detail, she claims that I am the father. I swear my brain just short-circuited at that very instant. I thought, wait, what? Now, let me be quite clear, I have never, ever hugged Jenny, much less had an intimate relationship with her. I was therefore unable to even comprehend her making such a ridiculous claim against me. I told her straight away, Jenny, I don't know what you're talking about, but there's no way I'm the father. We've never been close like that. However, she simply repeated it repeatedly, as if I were going to magically recall a night that never occurred. To put it mildly, it was strange. Though I was secretly freaking out, I attempted to remain composed, thinking perhaps this was a result of her mental health issues or something. This is the point at which things start to go wrong. A prenatal paternity test is something Jenny declines to take. She refused to move, even though I was sitting there thinking, if you're so sure it's my kid, why wouldn't you just take the test and prove it? It was a guilt trip city, and I wasn't buying it when she said things like, you need to be there for your child, and, you're abandoning us before the baby's even been born. I therefore made it plain that I would not sign anything if she chose not to take the test. I had no intention of legally binding myself to a child that wasn't mine. Easy, isn't it? That should be the end of it, I thought. I was mistaken, boy. The familial drama begins. My parents found out a few weeks later. My parents have this whole traditional values thing going on, and the moment they learn about the issue, they lose it. Like, totally lose it. I still love them though. I'm just standing there trying to speak, but they're not listening, and they're calling me names and calling me a shame and a deadbeat. They wouldn't listen to me when I informed them, Mom, Dad, this isn't my kid. Jenny's just making stuff up. They couldn't seem to get rid of the idea that I was the one who brought this baby into the world. After that, there were many ugly arguments. To be honest, I'm still upset about things that were said that I probably can't take back. Despite my repeated assurances that it wasn't my child, my parents persisted in pressuring me to act morally and become a father. They didn't care about it. They saw me as already guilty. They stated they couldn't believe I would refuse my own child and that they didn't raise me to be a deadbeat. I was not even in the same state when Jenny would have become pregnant, which makes the situation even more bizarre. Yes, she allegedly became pregnant while spending a whole month at a friend's house. My parents dismissed this when I brought it up to them. People make mistakes, they stated. Yes, this was more than a simple error. This was a serious charge that might destroy my life. At this point, Jenny is approximately 6 months along in her pregnancy. The entire family has now turned against me. Every phone contact, text message, and family meal revolves around the idea that I must mature and assume responsibility for this child. I was going crazy. I felt as though I was in a bad dream, and no matter what I did or said, no one took me seriously. Fortunately, most of my friends supported me, but even a few of them began to have doubts. For example, "Are you sure, man? Maybe you don't remember something." My parents finally gave me the ultimatum. They're casting me out of their lives, disowning me, and kicking me to the curb if I don't take charge and behave like a father. They were dead serious, despite my initial belief that they were bluffing. They made it clear to me that I would no longer be accepted in the family if I didn't comply. Indeed, they disowned me after I refused to give in. That hurt, let me tell you. I was angry, perplexed, and simply hurt. They decided to believe someone else over me, even though they were the ones who reared me and were meant to support me. I was thrown out by my own family as if I didn't exist. It was cruel. After the baby was born, things became even more bizarre. Playing the part of a proud grandmother, my mother was present at the hospital. It wasn't until later that I found out. I had to deal with some legal issues to get the paternity test completed because Jenny was still refusing to do it. Guess what happened when the results were in? Not my child. I had no possibility of becoming the father. And I had a simultaneous feeling of relief and rage as soon as I held the paper in my hands. Finally, they'll see the truth. They'll realize they were wrong, and everything will go back to normal. That was my thought when I sent my parents the results. Instead, they began bombarding my phone with requests for forgiveness, money offers, and apologies. In an attempt to make things better, my dad even mailed me several $100s. The problem is that I retained the money. Yes, I did accept it. After everything they had to do to me, I felt like I owed them. But pardon them? I made it plain that I would not expose myself to such treachery again if they were prepared to disown me for such a thing. I understand, I truly do. While the majority of my friends supported me, others, along with my therapist, began to say things like, "Maybe you should give them another chance. They're your parents after all." However, how can you simply forgive someone who was willing to discard you so readily? When someone believes a falsehood about their own child, how can you trust them? I'm currently caught between the belief that I did nothing wrong and the question of whether I should even make an effort to mend my family's relationship. I can't get rid of the sensation that they let me down when I needed them the most, though, because every time I think about it, I recall how fast they betrayed me. Okay, so you would think that things would settle down after the drama involving Jenny's kid and my parents, wouldn't they? Not at all. My life had different ideas. If anything, the situation continued to get worse. You would think it would have ended with me proving I wasn't the father, but wow, I wish it had been that easy. It turns out that people would do anything to avoid accepting responsibility if they don't want to acknowledge that they made a mistake. I therefore thought, okay, now my parents will realize they were wrong, and maybe things can get back to normal, after the paternity test results showed that I wasn't the father. However, rather than providing the solace I had hoped for, things became much more problematic. To begin with, Jenny went totally crazy. She began circulating the area with tales that I had interfered with the test in some way or had fabricated it. Yes, you read correctly. She believed that I had somehow persuaded an entire laboratory to falsify the results to support my claims. I mean, how could I possibly do that? I'm not a genius who can rig DNA testing. I'm simply an ordinary guy. Jenny, however, was not listening. She was determined to paint me as the antagonist in her tale. She went around claiming that I had deceived everyone into believing I wasn't the father and that I was leaving her and the child. It didn't matter that it didn't make sense. People began to trust her. Rumors from small towns traveled quickly, and soon I was being seen as a scumbag by people at the grocery store. I even had people come right up to me and question why I wasn't taking charge of my child. It enraged me. Nobody appeared to care that I had the test results to show that I wasn't the father. I was being held responsible for something I had nothing to do with, while Jenny was out there acting like the victim. Never in my life have I felt so powerless. Being betrayed by your family is one thing, but what about when everyone in the community believes you are the villain? That has a distinct sound. What about my parents? They were still making an effort to be polite, but it was obvious that they were also at a loss for how to respond to the scenario. My mother kept phoning and leaving heartfelt, lengthy voicemails expressing her desire for her family to reunite. She wanted to brush everything under the rug, as if nothing had ever happened, and didn't even discuss what had transpired. She even invited me over for dinner, as if it would suddenly undo all the harm they had caused. It was offensive in addition to being awkward. They believed that a few family meals and some forced grins would make everything okay after what they had to do to me. Like they didn't even grasp how much trust they had broken, they just said, "Let's move on." There was no apology or recognition of how severely they had messed up. And that's the problem. Trust cannot be restored with a hug and a dinner once it has been shattered in that way. Rebuilding requires a lot of labor and effort, and they weren't even prepared to acknowledge their mistakes. The worst part was when my father attempted to buy me off. He simply emailed me to offer to buy me a new automobile if I returned to the family. As in, what? Did they believe they could simply buy my pardon? I wasn't even sure how to react because it was so disconnected from reality. For a long time, I just gazed at the email, trying to determine whether it was a cruel joke. My dad was serious though. I didn't answer. I was unable to. How can you respond to such a thing? Correctly repairing things was not important to them. Simply because it was convenient for them, they wanted me back in their life. And I became aware of how little they truly understood what they had done when they believed that hurling money at me would make everything better. The worst aspect, however, was discovering later that Jenny had begun contacting people I knew in an attempt to include them in her drama. She even tried to persuade Samantha, my ex-girlfriend, that I was this awful person who had left his child behind. After years of not communicating, Sam suddenly texted me, saying, "We need to talk." I didn't know what she was talking about at first, but when she revealed that Jenny had been attempting to rekindle old drama by contacting her, I nearly lost it. I told Jenny to cease over the phone. I wasn't going to allow her to include my friends and ex-partners in her mess. My parents sued me for cutting off contact and tried to drag me back into their drama. Their manipulation led to a court battle. I got my friend's sister pregnant, but she lied about it. My parents disowned me, but now that they know the truth, they are pleading with me. Okay, so here's the thing. I need to get this off my chest because my life became a total wreck around a year ago. Let me begin at the beginning because, believe me, this is one of those situations where you're just like, seriously, what the hell? I never imagined that I'd be here sharing this on Reddit, but I suppose that's what happens when your family goes crazy and you're left standing there, wondering, how did this even happen? My friend Dave has a sister named Jenny. Both of them have been in my life for years. It's nothing big, is it? We all grew up in the same area and occasionally hang out. Jenny was never quite like the others. I don't mean to come across as cruel, but she was dealing with some mental health issues. To be honest, it wasn't my business, and I don't know all the specifics. Everyone knew Jenny struggled, but Dave never mentioned it much and I didn't ask. In any case, Jenny unexpectedly called me a year ago to tell me she was pregnant. All okay. That's cool. With the exception of one little detail, she claims that I am the father. I swear my brain just short-circuited at that very instant. I thought, wait, what? Now, let me be quite clear, I have never, ever hugged Jenny, much less had an intimate relationship with her. I was therefore unable to even comprehend her making such a ridiculous claim against me. I told her straight away, "Jenny, I don't know what you're talking about, but there's no way I'm the father. We've never been close like that." However, she simply repeated it repeatedly, as if I were going to magically recall a night that never occurred. To put it mildly, it was strange. Though I was secretly freaking out, I attempted to remain composed, thinking perhaps this was a result of her mental health issues or something. This is the point at which things start to go wrong. A prenatal paternity test is something Jenny declines to take. She refused to move, even though I was sitting there thinking, if you're so sure it's my kid, why wouldn't you just take the test and prove it? It was a guilt trip city, and I wasn't buying it when she said things like, "You need to be there for your child," and, "You're abandoning us before the baby's even been born." I therefore made it plain that I would not sign anything if she chose not to take the test. I had no intention of legally binding myself to a child that wasn't mine. Easy, isn't it? That should be the end of it, I thought. I was mistaken, boy. The familial drama begins. My parents found out a few weeks later. My parents have this whole traditional values thing going on, and the moment they learn about the issue, they lose it. Like, totally lose it. I still love them though. I'm just standing there trying to speak, but they're not listening, and they're calling me names and calling me a shame and a deadbeat. They wouldn't listen to me when I informed them, "Mom, Dad, this isn't my kid. Jenny's just making stuff up." They couldn't seem to get rid of the idea that I was the one who brought this baby into the world. After that, there were many ugly arguments. To be honest, I'm still upset about things that were said that I probably can't take back. Despite my repeated assurances that it wasn't my child, my parents persisted in pressuring me to act morally and become a father. They didn't care about it. They saw me as already guilty. They stated they couldn't believe I would refuse my own child and that they didn't raise me to be a deadbeat. I was not even in the same state when Jenny would have become pregnant, which makes the situation even more bizarre. Yes, she allegedly became pregnant while spending a whole month at a friend's house. My parents dismissed this when I brought it up to them. People make mistakes, they stated. Yes, this was more than a simple error. This was a serious charge that might destroy my life. At this point, Jenny is approximately 6 months along in her pregnancy. The entire family has now turned against me. Every phone contact, text message, and family meal revolves around the idea that I must mature and assume responsibility for this child. I was going crazy. I felt as though I was in a bad dream, and no matter what I did or said, no one took me seriously. Fortunately, most of my friends supported me, but even a few of them began to have doubts. For example, "Are you sure, man? Maybe you don't remember something." My parents finally gave me the ultimatum. They're casting me out of their lives, disowning me, and kicking me to the curb if I don't take charge and behave like a father. They were dead serious, despite my initial belief that they were bluffing. They made it clear to me that I would no longer be accepted in the family if I didn't comply. Indeed, they disowned me after I refused to give in. That hurt, let me tell you. I was angry, perplexed, and simply hurt. They decided to believe someone else over me, even though they were the ones who reared me and were meant to support me. I was thrown out by my own family as if I didn't exist. It was cruel. After the baby was born, things became even more bizarre. Playing the part of a proud grandmother, my mother was present at the hospital. It wasn't until later that I found out. I had to deal with some legal issues to get the paternity test completed because Jenny was still refusing to do it. Guess what happened when the results were in? Not my child. I had no possibility of becoming the father. And I had a simultaneous feeling of relief and rage as soon as I held the paper in my hands. Finally, they'll see the truth. They'll realize they were wrong, and everything will go back to normal. That was my thought when I sent my parents the results. Instead, they began bombarding my phone with requests for forgiveness, money offers, and apologies. In an attempt to make things better, my dad even mailed me several $100s. The problem is that I retained the money. Yes, I did accept it. After everything they had to do to me, I felt like I owed them. But pardon them? I made it plain that I would not expose myself to such treachery again if they were prepared to disown me for such a thing. I understand, I truly do. While the majority of my friends supported me, others, along with my therapist, began to say things like, "Maybe you should give them another chance. They're your parents after all." However, how can you simply forgive someone who was willing to discard you so readily? When someone believes a falsehood about their own child, how can you trust them? I'm currently caught between the belief that I did nothing wrong and the question of whether I should even make an effort to mend my family's relationship. I can't get rid of the sensation that they let me down when I needed them the most, though, because every time I think about it, I recall how fast they betrayed me. Okay, so you would think that things would settle down after the drama involving Jenny's kid and my parents, wouldn't they? Not at all. My life had different ideas. If anything, the situation continued to get worse. You would think it would have ended with me proving I wasn't the father, but wow, I wish it had been that easy. It turns out that people would do anything to avoid accepting responsibility if they don't want to acknowledge that they made a mistake. I therefore thought, okay, now my parents will realize they were wrong, and maybe things can get back to normal, after the paternity test results showed that I wasn't the father. However, rather than providing the solace I had hoped for, things became much more problematic. To begin with, Jenny went totally crazy. She began circulating the area with tales that I had interfered with the test in some way or had fabricated it. Yes, you read correctly. She believed that I had somehow persuaded an entire laboratory to falsify the results to support my claims. I mean, how could I possibly do that? I'm not a genius who can rig DNA testing. I'm simply an ordinary guy. Jenny, however, was not listening. She was determined to paint me as the antagonist in her tale. She went around claiming that I had deceived everyone into believing I wasn't the father and that I was leaving her and the child. It didn't matter that it didn't make sense. People began to trust her. Rumors from small towns traveled quickly, and soon I was being seen as a scumbag by people at the grocery store. I even had people come right up to me and question why I wasn't taking charge of my child. It enraged me. Nobody appeared to care that I had the test results to show that I wasn't the father. I was being held responsible for something I had nothing to do with, while Jenny was out there acting like the victim. Never in my life have I felt so powerless. Being betrayed by your family is one thing, but what about when everyone in the community believes you are the villain? That has a distinct sound. What about my parents? They were still making an effort to be polite, but it was obvious that they were also at a loss for how to respond to the scenario. My mother kept phoning and leaving heartfelt, lengthy voicemails expressing her desire for her family to reunite. She wanted to brush everything under the rug, as if nothing had ever happened, and didn't even discuss what had transpired. She even invited me over for dinner, as if it would suddenly undo all the harm they had caused. It was offensive in addition to being awkward. They believed that a few family meals and some forced grins would make everything okay after what they had to do to me. Like they didn't even grasp how much trust they had broken, they just said, "Let's move on." There was no apology or recognition of how severely they had messed up. And that's the problem. Trust cannot be restored with a hug and a dinner once it has been shattered in that way. Rebuilding requires a lot of labor and effort, and they weren't even prepared to acknowledge their mistakes. The worst part was when my father attempted to buy me off. He simply emailed me to offer to buy me a new automobile if I returned to the family. As in, what? Did they believe they could simply buy my pardon? I wasn't even sure how to react because it was so disconnected from reality. For a long time, I just gazed at the email, trying to determine whether it was a cruel joke. My dad was serious though. I didn't answer. I was unable to. How can you respond to such a thing? Correctly repairing things was not important to them. Simply because it was convenient for them, they wanted me back in their life. And I became aware of how little they truly understood what they had done when they believed that hurling money at me would make everything better. The worst aspect, however, was discovering later that Jenny had begun contacting people I knew in an attempt to include them in her drama. She even tried to persuade Samantha, my ex-girlfriend, that I was this awful person who had left his child behind. After years of not communicating, Sam suddenly texted me, saying, "We need to talk." I didn't know what she was talking about at first, but when she revealed that Jenny had been attempting to rekindle old drama by contacting her, I nearly lost it. I told Jenny to cease over the phone. I wasn't going to allow her to include my friends and ex-partners in her mess. I was done with the lies and the games. However, she simply hung up after laughing. Talking to a wall was like that. Nothing I said would reach her since she was so engrossed in her fantasy world. By now, I was thinking about hiring a lawyer quite seriously. Even though I didn't want to go that far, I had no other option. I felt like I had no one on my side while Jenny was out there damaging my reputation and my parents were supporting her actions. Yes, I had the support of my closest friends, but even they were unaware of how awful things had gotten. At some point, I had to decide. I couldn't continue to wait for the next insane claim or rumor to surface, living in a condition of continual tension. I made the decision to sever all connections, not just with Jenny but also with my parents. It wasn't simple, in fact, it was awful. However, I realized I couldn't allow them to continue to bring me down. I sent my parents a lengthy email outlining my feelings of betrayal, my failure to trust them, and my inability to trust them going forward. Nothing was sugar-coated by me. I was honest with them, telling them that I wasn't ready to forgive them and that I wasn't sure if I would ever be. I advised them to start by sincerely apologizing and accepting responsibility for their conduct if they want to have any chance of a future relationship with me. No more acting as though nothing was wrong. There's no more ignoring issues. Regarding Jenny, I blocked her on all platforms. Her machinations were becoming too much for me to handle. I wasn't going to allow her to continue entangling me in her mess since she wasn't my concern. I even had to inform her brother Dave that I would not be able to spend some time with his family. Dave has always been a great buddy, so that was difficult, but I had to prioritize my own health. I took them off a few months ago, and to be honest, I've been relieved. Even if I occasionally feel bad or question my decision, I know that ultimately I made the right choice. Even though it's difficult, there are moments when you have to leave. It's messy and convoluted, to be sure, but at least I'm not always watching for the next catastrophe to occur. At last, I'm able to breathe. But man, I never would have believed you if you had told me a year ago that this is where I would wind up. I suppose that's just the way life is. First update. Okay, so this is where it gets even stranger. I believed that the pandemonium would be resolved if I severed my relationship with Jenny and my parents. I reasoned that if I cut them out of my life, everything would settle down and I could move on. Naturally, however, things are not so simple. Terminating them? And that was only the start of a whole new problem. A few weeks after blocking Jenny and sending the email to my parents, I received an unexpected contact from Mike, an old acquaintance from high school. He suddenly asked how I was doing, even though we hadn't spoken in years. Okay, that's random, I thought at first, but then he informed me that my parents contacted him. In the past, Mike and I weren't even that close, so why would my parents get in touch with him? That was a serious warning sign. It seems that they had been attempting to persuade others to speak with me on their behalf. I'm speaking of longtime acquaintances, distant family members, and even folks I don't really know. They were telling everyone that they were concerned about me and that I was in a horrible position. They seemed to be attempting to paint me as the unstable one. What's the worst? They were presenting the entire situation as though I should have apologized for interrupting them. Mike didn't mind. He wanted to alert me because he knew something was wrong, but it went beyond that. I began receiving messages from a wide range of people over the course of the following few days, including some I had just met a few times and others I hadn't spoken to in years. It was crazy. Everything they were saying was the same. Your parents are really worried about you. Or, you should give them another chance. Somehow, they had persuaded everyone that I was the villain in this scenario, that I had lost my mind and had to make amends. It was unbelievable to me. My parents were out here waging a full-fledged public relations campaign to paint me as the villain while I was simply trying to move on with my life. I had the impression that I was in a strange parallel dimension where nothing made sense. I tried to avoid the drama as much as possible, but it kept coming back to me. When they contacted my employer, it was the last straw. You heard correctly, my parents gave my workplace a call. I'm not even sure how they obtained the number, but they managed to locate my boss's phone number and called the office to inform him that I wasn't feeling well. How embarrassing must that have been? One day, with a serious expression on his face, my employer took me into his office and asked me how things were at home. I was taken aback. At first, I wasn't even sure what to say. When your boss asks if your parents believe you've lost your mind, what do you say? Fortunately, he was really understanding when I told him the whole issue. Even if he expressed regret for bringing it up, the damage had already been done, guy. My own parents were now attempting to interfere with my work. They seemed intent on ruining everything for me simply because I refused to comply with their demands. Then there was nothing I could do. To obtain a restraining order against them, I went to a lawyer and began the process. Even though I didn't want to go that far, I had no other option. They were interfering with my friends, my career, and my mental health. Even if it meant officially cutting them off, I had to defend myself. The procedure was drawn out and tense. Along with the paperwork and court dates, there was a great deal of tension. However, I also experienced a strange sense of relaxation. I felt like I was finally taking charge of the matter. I will no longer allow them to take over every aspect of my life. No more allowing them to control the story. Naturally, chaos ensued when they learned about the restraining order. In a lengthy, guilt-ridden email, my mother told me how she never thought her own son would act in this way and that family should always remain united. She said that I was the source of all the suffering and that I was destroying the family. I didn't bite, but it was textbook manipulation. I didn't answer. It grew worse before it got better, though I wish I could say that was the end of it. One day, my car was vandalized when I got home from work. The word liar had been keyed into its side by someone. I didn't have any evidence that it was my parents, but really, who else could it be? Other than a few close friends, I hadn't disclosed the restraining order to anyone. The only people with an incentive to do such a thing were my parents. They had to strike out in any way they could since it seemed like they couldn't lose control. I reported it to the police, but it was never resolved. Another reminder that sometimes the ones who should love you the most can become your worst adversaries, even if you attempt to do things the right way. In order to be safe, I then began parking my car at a friend's house. I have to stop taking chances. In case they tried something similar, I even put security cameras around my apartment. I had the impression that I was constantly on edge, waiting for anything to happen. But after a while, things began to settle down. After the restraining order was granted, my parents were prohibited from getting in touch with me or visiting my house or place of employment. My shoulders were greatly relieved. I was able to breathe for the first time in what seemed like an eternity. Even after several months, I'm still getting my bearings. I had to explain the entire scenario to my friends and coworkers and make sure they understood the truth, which required a lot of damage control. While some were doubtful, the majority were supportive. Do you honestly think your folks would go that far? I understand. It's difficult to accept. You understand, however, how far some individuals will go when they feel like they're losing control since you've been there yourself. In retrospect, I never thought things would become this terrible. It's amazing how easily a family may turn against you if you don't follow their rules. All of this has taught me one vital lesson, though. You cannot allow anyone, not even your family, to dictate how you live your life. Even if it hurts, there are times when you have to make the difficult decision to leave. I have no idea what the future holds for my parents and me. Perhaps they will come to their senses and truly apologize. Perhaps not. In any case, I'm done allowing them to rule my life. I'm not looking back. I have my own road to follow. Second update. Okay, so this is when things start to change. I assumed things would finally calm down when I obtained the restraining order and began attempting to start over. Unexpectedly, however, life had other ideas. My folks found a new method to play tricks on me just when I was starting to feel like I could breathe again. It wasn't direct contact this time. It wasn't sending emails or damaging my car. No, this was messed up on a completely different level. I'm sitting at home one day, taking care of nothing, when I receive a letter in the mail. That's not too strange, is it? This letter, however, came from a lawyer. I initially assumed it had to do with the restraining order, possibly some last-minute paperwork or something. However, no. A lawsuit was filed. For what, you ask? My own parents were suing me. Suffering on an emotional level. I was reading something that I couldn't even believe. They were actually suing me for interrupting them, claiming they were entitled to compensation since my actions had seriously damaged their mental well-being. They went so far as to say that I had cut them off from the rest of the family, which was absurd because it was they who isolated me, not the other way around. For a good 5 minutes, I just sat there and stared at the letter, trying to take in the situation. My wife disappeared after a girls' trip, and now she's trying to manipulate her way back into my life, acting like nothing ever happened. It's common to hear statements like, "I never saw it coming." That's precisely how it went for me, though. I was married to my wife for the entire 4 years that we were together. To be honest, I thought we were doing well. For the most part, I believed that we were in agreement, and we had plans and a life plan laid out. The problem is that we both desired children. Or I believe that we both did. As soon as we were married, we began to discuss it seriously. She would constantly express her desire for 2 or 3 children, rambling on about the names we would give them, the nursery decor, and everything else. She would even spend time on the internet planning our future children's lives while perusing baby gear and clothing. It kept us connected and was sort of our thing to talk about. We were eager to begin this new chapter in our lives together, and everything appeared to be going according to plan. But after that, we received some terrible news, which really devastated me. We visited a doctor to find out what was wrong after a few months of trying to conceive. To cut a long tale short, it was me. The doctor essentially informed us that our chances of naturally becoming parents were very limited because my count was much too low. It felt like a stomach punch. I felt worthless. Our entire set of plans vanished in a flash. I was hit hard, terribly hard, by the news. I ended up for a while in a fairly awful position. I was a complete disaster at first, but therapy ultimately helped. At first, she seemed to be rather supportive, stating that it didn't matter and that she would be content with us alone. However, there was something strange about the way she said it right from the start. She seems to have dropped it far too soon. She was all about starting a family one minute, and then she claimed she didn't need children to be content. I understand that people change their ideas, but her entire demeanor seemed strange to me. From thinking about baby names, she had completely stopped talking about children. Furthermore, it seemed as though she began to view me in a different light. She would suddenly start making little jabs at me that she had never mentioned before, like how I wasn't taking care of myself, that I should work out, or that I should be more productive around the house. Yes, I could have gained a few pounds, but it seemed like she was constantly looking for reasons to accuse me. She would dismiss it when I questioned her about the abrupt shift in attitude. She would claim that I was being unduly sensitive and that I was only dreaming. But I was aware of a problem. She was different from the lady I married, the one who would spend hours sitting with me discussing our future. She wasn't particularly cruel, but there was a certain coldness about her, as if she had already mentally checked out and was merely doing the part. I suppose that as time went on, I began to trust her when she assured me that everything was okay. In order to avoid coming out as needy or insecure, I quit pressing. In any case, after a few years, we were only getting by. We had gotten into a pattern where we hardly discussed anything important. We seemed more like housemates than husband and wife. She would always dismiss my attempts to discuss other choices, such as adoption or surrogacy, by stating that she didn't want to consider them. I never really believed her when she said, "As long as we're together, I'm happy." She seemed more concerned with persuading herself than I was. Suddenly, she informs me she wants to take a girls' trip. Now, traveling with her buddies was nothing out of the ordinary. She had previously done it a few times, and I had always encouraged her. For along, she talked about wanting to travel to America with her pals, while we lived in Brighton. We had developed this trust over the years, so I didn't give it a second thought. I therefore made sure she had everything she needed, assisted her with packing, and drove her to the airport. I recall her final words before she departed. She turned to me and said, "Thank you for being so supportive." I found it a little strange that she would say that because I hadn't done anything particularly noteworthy, but she appeared so sincere that I dismissed it as her simply expressing gratitude. I remained up that night to make sure things went well by calling her when she landed. I kept myself occupied around the house, watching TV, keeping an eye on the time, and waited for her to text me to let me know she had landed because her flight was expected to take roughly 9 hours. I called her to check in as soon as I noticed her flight had landed. The phone kept ringing, but no one picked it up. I didn't give it much thought because I assumed she was exhausted and might have gone directly to her hotel and crashed. However, when morning arrived, I still hadn't heard from her. I began to have this nagging concern in the back of my mind. I thought perhaps she was simply busy or her phone was on quiet, so I tried calling again and then texted her a few times. However, I was officially freaking out after a couple more hours of radio silence. In the end, I gave her sister a call to check whether she had heard from her. Nothing. I was really beginning to freak out by this point. In the hopes that something had gone wrong with her phone or that she just hadn't had time to check in, I even went so far as to call her companions, who were meant to be traveling with her. However, they were also perplexed when I called them. They did not accompany her on the trip. Back at home, they were enjoying coffee while seated 2 streets away. It truly hit me at that point. She wasn't traveling with any girls. She didn't have any friends. She hadn't accompanied anyone anywhere. She simply vanished. It seemed as though my stomach had fallen through the floor as I sat there with the phone. I was unable to comprehend it. Why would she tell me such a lie? Why wouldn't she notify me before leaving? I made an effort to persuade myself that it was an error of some sort, such as perhaps she had missed a connecting flight or that she had been unable to contact due to an emergency. But I knew in my heart that she had this planned. Her expressing "thank you for being so supportive," and the entire girls' trip were all components of whatever she had been imagining. I was at a loss for what to do. I couldn't wake up, as if I were living in a nightmare. I had never married a woman like this. I didn't even recognize this person. The coldness, the way she had stopped discussing our future, and those small digs about my appearance and health all began to make sense. I simply hadn't noticed, or perhaps I hadn't wanted to see, that she had been drifting away for a while. I just sat there looking at my phone that night, hoping for a call, a text, anything. However, nothing materialized, and I knew in my heart that it wouldn't. I remember lying there and staring at the ceiling when I woke up the following morning, thinking that it was all just a bad dream. But when she saw that her side of the bed was empty, reality set in. In fact, she had gone. After packing her bags, she disappeared. The promises I had given myself the previous evening, maybe she was late, or perhaps her phone died, were no longer valid. She had clearly planned this and wanted to go. I was completely in denial for the first few days. I would keep ringing her phone in the hopes of hearing her voice and perhaps receiving an explanation. I even left messages. I kept leaving them in the hopes that she would understand, even though I was half the time at a loss for words. However, I only received quiet, which strangely made things worse. It was as though I had been a stranger to her all along and had been left to work things out on my own without knowing what had gone wrong. Her family was initially just as surprised as I was. They hadn't heard from her, and her mother didn't know anything about her plans. In the end, I visited there more times than I could remember in order to speak with her mother and get answers. They must have felt sorry for me. When I couldn't bring myself to cook, her mom would prepare meals for me and occasionally let me stay there. She would sit there while I talked about all the tiny things that didn't make sense, attempting to figure out how my life had suddenly become so complicated. And to be honest, there were times when I was too numb to speak and just sat there in silence. I oscillated between rage, despair, and remorse. What went wrong was a question I kept asking myself. Was there a sign I missed? Was I not paying enough attention to her? On certain days, I would review all of our arguments and conversations in an attempt to determine what caused her to leave. I kept thinking about what I could have done better and how I could have preserved our marriage. It may sound dramatic, but I was completely preoccupied with figuring it out. It seemed as though the solution would somehow make everything better. I hardly slept or ate, and my work also began to suffer. People took notice. When they inquired about my well-being, I would just dismiss it by claiming that I was occupied with personal matters. Admitting the truth, the fact that my wife abandoned me without saying a word, was embarrassing. I eventually told a few close friends, and they tried their best to divert my attention by bringing me out to hang out and encouraging me to move on. However, I would still ponder about her, wondering where she was and why I wasn't enough to keep her around, even when I was with them. The incessant inquiries from strangers, including neighbors, relatives, acquaintances, and even former co-workers who had heard I was married, were among the worst aspects. It was like pulling out a new scab each time somebody asked, "How's married life treating you?" And "How's your wife?" I would just smile and tell them that everything was good since I lacked the courage to tell them she had left. But each time I repeated that untruth, it felt more weighty. The only thing that worked in the end was therapy. Although I had never gone before, I realized I couldn't manage it alone after a few months of hardly functioning. In order to talk to someone who was impartial and unfamiliar with our baggage, I contacted a therapist and began attending once a week. It was beneficial. I would express my rage, betrayal, and the void she had left in my life. I would talk endlessly about the restless evenings and how I would lie awake repeatedly reliving everything. The therapist assisted me in realizing that she would not have remained here if it had been a magical moment. It wasn't my fault. She made the decision to go. It was a difficult pill to take. I had the feeling that I was flawed and had somehow alienated her for a long time. However, I gradually began to see things differently. I chose to overlook her long-standing coldness and distance, assuming that things would improve on their own. I had persuaded myself that I could maintain my composure and that our marriage could be saved by my efforts alone. The realization that it wasn't hurt. As time passed, I began to restore my life in tiny increments. It wasn't until she departed that I realized how much I had lost in our marriage. I had always been the one who tried his hardest to make sure she was content and that our home life was comfortable. But now that I had so much free time, I was at a loss for what to do. I therefore began resuming old pastimes that I had forgotten about. I tried cooking new meals, went to the gym, and started reading literature I had been putting off. Eventually, the work also improved. I was hardly keeping up with my job at first, simply going through the motions. However, when I began to feel more like myself, I worked harder at my job. I felt like I still had control over something in my life, which was one of the few things that gave me a sense of accomplishment. Although I had always been skilled at what I did, I now give it my all, the extra hours, the concentration. I got a promotion as a result of it, something I never would have obtained if I had been moping about my problems. Even yet, there were painful days. A picture, an old movie ticket stub, or other small items that brought back memories I'd tried to forget would occasionally remind me of her. Looking at them, I would question her actions, whether she ever considered me, and whether she ever felt bad about what she had done. But gradually, those times began to disappear. I was able to let go of those memories a little more quickly and move on a little more easily each time. Additionally, I got back in touch with people I hadn't seen much of since getting married. We resumed our activities, including hiking and hitting the golf range, something I hadn't done in years. Having folks by my side who weren't involved in the mess and who could support me in moving on without pulling me back into the agony was a relief. In hindsight, I saw that I had invested much too much of myself in that relationship, in being her spouse. I felt like I had lost a significant portion of who I was when she departed, as if she had taken a piece of me with her. But I was rediscovering who I was, piece by piece. Although it wasn't quick or simple, I was making progress. I was finally able to see someone who wasn't defined by her past actions when I looked in the mirror at the conclusion of that year. I wasn't just the man whose wife had abandoned him. I had rebuilt, I had survived, and I was stronger now. I felt as like I could truly live my life without her shadow looming over me for the first time in years. To be honest, I took pride in that. I believed I had moved on from everything. After all that chaos, life had at last begun to seem normal again, or as close to normal as it could be. My work was going really well, my friends kept me occupied, and I had my routine down pat. Even my daily thoughts about her had stopped. Even while I still occasionally had flashbacks to odd memories, it wasn't as frequent as it used to be, when everything I did was somehow related to her. She was therefore the last person I expected to see standing there when someone knocked on my door one Saturday morning. But there she was with a baby at my doorway. I went cold. It was like witnessing a ghost, and for a moment my brain simply stopped functioning. Though perhaps a touch worn down, she still had her typical appearance. She looked at me as if she genuinely believed that I would be pleased to see her. I thought I was past caring, so yes, that really got to me. As it happens, meeting her again evoked many feelings I had previously suppressed. At first, I remained silent. I just stared as I stood there. As if nothing had happened, she gave me a smile before asking, "May I come in?" The nerve. Really, I mean it. She just shows up here as if I should be welcoming her back with open arms after everything she's done. However, I maintained my composure and told her, "No, you can stay right there," explaining that I didn't want her in my home bringing all that commotion back into the one area I had created for myself. Despite her rather disoriented appearance, she remained in her spot and simply launched into her story. She began by saying, "I know this might be a shock, But I wanted to come back and explain everything. Her expression was hopeful, as though she truly thought I would be willing to listen. I was tempted to just close the door and laugh in her face, but I was too intrigued. I was curious about the reason behind her disappearance and what she had come up with. She continued by explaining that she had erred in leaving and that she had come to the realization that she had lost the greatest thing that had ever occurred to her, not my words, but hers. She claimed to have thought a lot and to have finally realized what was important in life after having this child. After years of ignoring me, it seemed that what mattered most was unexpectedly knocking on my door. "This is our second chance," she remarked, glancing down at the infant. What I was hearing was unbelievable. Our second opportunity? As if this child were some sort of magical reset button that would allow us to resume where we left off. I was furious on the inside, but I attempted to maintain a neutral appearance. She continued by adding that although she had made a grave error, we could now start over, just the three of us. She wanted us to be a family once more. "Why did you leave?" was the final question that had been bothering me ever since she appeared. I tried to speak as steadily as I could, but I wasn't sure how much longer I could contain myself. Now that she was here, I needed to hear it from her since I had tortured myself with all the possibilities for years in an attempt to comprehend. After hesitating and glancing down at her feet as if embarrassed, she finally told me the truth, or at least what I thought it was. She acknowledged that she had left because she wanted a child and had found someone who could provide one for her because I couldn't. She honestly stated it as if it were insignificant, as though she hadn't destroyed my life, and as though I should just nod and take it as gospel. She clarified that although the man she had left didn't stay, she had already given birth and had suddenly come to the realization that she wanted me back. Easy. I paused to think about what she was saying. She was here, confessing that she had left me, fled with a man, had his child, and now expected me to accept it. As if I should simply forget and forgive. "So you left, found someone else, had his baby, and now you think you can come back and pretend like nothing happened?" I asked her. She broke down in tears and apologized, admitting that she had made a big mistake, but I remained unmoved. She kept talking about how she knew she was supposed to be with me and that I was the one she really loved. To be honest, maintaining a straight face was difficult. She sounded so crazy that I was shocked. I could see it clearly on her face that this was desperation, not love. She then attempted to guilt-trip me by talking endlessly about how difficult it had been for her to be a single mother. In fact, she attempted to paint herself as the victim in all of this, acting as though her decisions hadn't brought her to this point. She assured me she was prepared to work things out this time and that she wanted my help. "Who does she think I am?" was all I could think about. I listened to it all as I stood there, but I had had enough. I told her right away, "You made your choice a long time ago, and now you have to live with it. There's no second chance here." She appeared astonished, as if she had never even imagined that I would say no, as if she truly believed she could simply saunter back into my life because it would suit her. She became irate just when I thought she would finally understand and depart. She became angry with me, accusing me of selfishness and demanding that I give her another chance to make amends. She said that she could have taken half of everything and divorced me at that time if she had so desired. She even had the audacity to remark that the house should still belong to her. I felt a surge of relief as it seemed like her true self was revealing itself in front of me. At last, I was recognizing her true self. I refrained from arguing with her. I didn't speak louder. "We're done. You wanted a different life, and now you have it. This isn't my responsibility anymore." I simply replied, looking at her, and then I closed the door in her face, interrupting her if she had any more words to say. I was struck with a peculiar sense of serenity as I stood there and heard her muffled screaming coming from the other side of the door. She might shout, cry, knock, or do anything else. However, I knew I would never allow her to return. This stranger who believed she could pick up the pieces when it was convenient for her took the place of the lady I had loved and married. Feeling lighter than I have in years, I moved away from the door and took a seat. I believed that was it after I shut the door behind her. I assumed she would understand and simply walk away. However, no. Rather, she began pounding on the door while shouting various things. The nerve seemed unbelievable to me. She had the gall to stand there and insist that I listen to her while I was in the one place that was truly mine, the only place I had been able to recover from the disaster she had left me in. I initially considered ignoring it and letting her scream till she became weary. But then I started to wonder. I was curious to know what kinds of excuses she would offer this time. I opened the door just enough to let her know I was paying attention, but not enough to let her in. She appeared to be astonished that I hadn't given her the response she desired, as if she had just been slapped across the face. As if we were having a typical argument and not coping with her abandonment, She began a lengthy monologue in which she expressed her willingness to forgive me for closing the door on her and her want to start over. She went on and on about how if we both worked hard, we could work things out. I was unable to contain myself at that moment. I laughed, really laughed, because this woman had more nerve than I had ever seen. When I did that, she appeared enraged, as if I should feel guilty for not paying attention to her. I said to her, "You left. You had your chance, and you threw it all away. I'm not just going to pretend none of that happened because you feel like it." Her face flushed, and she began to talk about how she had been so lost after leaving and how she had discovered her error too late. "You don't understand how hard it was for me," she said. However, I didn't believe it. I informed her that she had taken the decision to leave. She had plotted it, made up a falsehood about it, and then carried it out. Now her remorse meant nothing. That's when she lost it. Her entire tone shifted. She stopped doing the melancholy, repentant act and began to attack me, accusing me of being unjust and lacking the grace to give her another chance. "If I'd wanted to, I could have taken everything from you back then. I could have taken half of everything you own," she bravely said. I simply stood in awe. This woman, who had abandoned me without saying anything, now believed she should be compensated in some way for not attempting to defraud me. As if she was worthy of praise for not being as awful as she could have been. I replied, "So, what am I supposed to be grateful for? Grateful that you only ditched me and didn't take my stuff with you?" Her expression was a mixture of rage and something more, possibly desperation or guilt, as she gazed at me. But to be honest, I didn't give a damn by then. I had just finished. That was where all the years I had spent questioning myself, feeling bad, and wondering if I was somehow to blame for her leaving vanished. I felt as though the burden I had been dragging about had finally been removed when I met her for who she truly was. But she wasn't finished. She began to pace my porch while complaining that I would regret not giving her another chance and that I would never find someone like her. In fact, by refusing to take her back, she attempted to make me feel as though I was the one who was missing out. It was strange. As if I should be pleading with her to stay, here she was, the one who ruined everything we owned. She became even louder and continued to complain about how I had made her leave in the first place when she realized I wasn't going to back down. She said that none of this would have occurred if I had been more understanding about the entire kid situation. Her reasoning seemed to indicate that I had failed her as a husband because I couldn't conceive, which somehow excused her from leaving to have a kid with someone else. The mental acrobatics were amazing. To be honest, I was shocked that she was attempting to blame me for her decisions. I straight up told her, "Look, if you wanted a kid that badly, you could have told me the truth. You didn't have to lie to my face and pretend everything was fine while planning your exit." To that, she had nothing to say. Simply looked at me as if I had hit her. However, I prevented her from speaking. I said, "You made that choice all on your own, and now you've got to live with it. That's not my problem." She made one final attempt, returning to her dejected expression, and urged me to consider the boy and how I was being unjust by ignoring him. She literally exploited the child in her arms to make me feel guilty, as if I were the villain in this situation. However, I wasn't buying into it. I replied, "I don't know that child. I have nothing to do with him. He's not mine, and neither are you." That was the end of it. I could see her coming to terms with it at last. She was aware that I would never change my mind, and that I would never allow her to return to my life. I could see the rage waning and being replaced by something else, either genuine regret or simply exasperation. However, I didn't care. She had attempted to walk all over me and expected me to smile and give her credit, but now she was simply a stranger. For a few more seconds, she stood there as if she was waiting for me to decide to call her back. I didn't say anything else though. When it finally hit her that I meant every word, I just stood there and watched her expression. I closed the door without giving it another glance. I also didn't wait for her to rap on it again this time. In my heart, I knew that I had already made up my mind and that there was no turning back. I don't know, but I felt like I had finally won as I moved away from the door. It was over, even though she had spent so much time hoping to return and use manipulation to get back into my life. I had freedom. Neither for her nor for us was there going to be another chance. She was now only a memory, one that I had at last relegated to the past. I felt like I could breathe again after all those years of suffering and shame. And what do you know? It was pleasant. I experienced an odd sense of tranquility as soon as I shut that door behind her. I no longer felt sad, furious, or even astonished. It was as though all of the effort I had put into her over the years, all of the sorrow, the shame, and the never-ending wondering, had simply disappeared. I was prepared to move on since I had at last found the closure I didn't realize I needed. This time, everything was truly finished, But naturally, it wasn't as tidy a conclusion as I had planned. Her mother texted me a few days later. She apologized, stating she was embarrassed by her daughter's handling of the situation and that she had attempted to reason with her, but clearly it had failed. Her mother was a kind person. She had been quite helpful to me when her daughter departed, and I could see that she was truly distressed by the situation. Although I had nothing against her, I didn't want to be dragged back into that situation. I simply said, "Thanks for checking in response," and didn't say anything further. I wasn't going to waste time justifying my choice, and I wasn't going to offer her mother any more information. She knew it was over because she understood. I learned tidbits over the course of the following few weeks via social media and mutual connections. She had apparently returned to living with her parents, and things weren't going well. The father of the child, the man she had left me for, was not involved at all. He had bailed out. She was left to figure things out on her own because, apparently, he hadn't committed to the long term. Few individuals were eager to help because she had essentially burned every bridge. Her former friends, who had supported me when she first vanished, didn't feel sorry for her. They weren't eager to get drawn back into her drama because they had all moved on. You can't hold them responsible. Her parents weren't too happy either. They didn't have enough money to sustain her and the child. I was aware of this since her father called me shortly after her mother texted me. Curiosity overcame me, and I nearly didn't respond. He was direct but courteous. He mentioned that they were having financial difficulties and suggested that I might be able to assist them in some way. He continued talking about the infant and how difficult things were for them, saying, "We know you cared about her once." I listened courteously, but I couldn't help but giggle a little, not aloud, but you get the idea, when he began to talk endlessly about how his daughter only needed a little help to get back on her feet. I politely informed him that his daughter made her own decisions and that I was neither in a position nor in the right frame of mind to assist. Since he didn't pursue it further, I believe he understood the message. Before I know it, her friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years, begin contacting me. Some attempted to use the guilt angle, claiming that she was going through a difficult moment and that perhaps I could find it in my heart to give her another chance. She even had the audacity to say that the child needed a father figure and that I shouldn't allow my resentment stand in the way of my efforts to assist him. However, I refused to back down. I refused to allow anyone to make me feel guilty for making my own decision at last. I had given that woman all I had after years of feeling inadequate, and she had tossed it all away. Instead of relying on me to save her, she should at least take responsibility for her decisions. The calls and messages gradually decreased in volume before ceasing completely. Everyone seemed to finally realize that I was serious, that I had moved on, and that I would not get ensnared again. That's when the true calm arrived. For the first time in years, my life felt peaceful and typical. I had my friends, my job, and my routines. I had rebuilt my life on my own terms, so it wasn't a fancy, glamorous one, but it was mine. The irony is that I once again began to discover joy in the small things, which I had not given much thought to when I was married. I would read novels I had been meaning to read for years, cook my own food, and take walks. It felt good to be free, and I understood that I could live my life as I pleased without anyone's approval. I wasn't always concerned about other people's happiness or approval, for once. I felt as though I had gradually regained my life. Occasionally, I would stumble into someone who knew us both, and they would inquire, "Hey, what happened to her?" I would respond with a succinct, courteous response and shift the topic. I simply didn't want to keep going back to a chapter that was so obviously over. It wasn't that I was concealing anything. I had finally mastered the skill of leaving her in the past. When I last heard from her, things weren't going well. She was still jumping between her parents' house and friends' sofas after her welcome, and she was having trouble keeping a job. Occasionally, people I don't often communicate with would message me to let me know that she was seeking assistance from anyone who would listen. Some of them even implied that she hoped I would reconsider, that perhaps I would change my mind and end up playing dad to her child. However, that was not going to occur. I had already invested too much time and effort into rebuilding my life to consider taking that route. Her safety net was not going to be me. Just because things didn't go as she had hoped, I wasn't going to be the one to pick up the pieces. Nothing was going to pull me back into that chapter. I was finished. Ultimately, I believe I received the necessary closure. She was now coping with the repercussions of her decisions? And me? It was the first time since the day she departed that I felt completely, truly free. I had had enough of her looming over my life. I was happy that I had moved on. Not in a grand dramatic sense, but simply, contented. And what do you know? That was sufficient. My husband demanded a DNA test moments after I gave birth, But he underestimated what I'd do to protect my daughter and our legacy. The words that just came out of my husband's mouth are far worse than the pain that rips through me like a sharp blade. Adam comes forward, his pricey suit immaculately ironed despite the 12 hours we've spent in this delivery room, while I'm still gasping for air, trembling and drenched in sweat. He says, "I want a DNA test," in a flat, impersonal voice that sounds like he's ordering coffee rather than asking about our baby daughter's paternity. With her hand still holding our baby, my baby, the nurse freezes. The beeping monitors suddenly become too loud and obtrusive, and the room appears to shrink. Dr. Collins's wrinkled face wrinkles in worry as he looks up from his charts. My voice sounds odd and aloof, as if it were someone else's. "Adam, what are you talking about?" I ask. He refuses to look at me. Rather, he looks at our 7-pound daughter. 4 ounces of excellence, with calculating coldness. "You heard me, McKenna. I want proof she's mine." Like poison gas, the accusation lingers in the air. This is the result of 12 years of marriage. To make him feel even a small portion of the agony pulsing through my chest, I want to shout and throw something. Rather, I chuckle. It's an unpleasant sound, bitter and nasty. "Get out." The words make my tongue taste like metal. "Get out before I call security." Dr. Collins begins, "Mrs. Harrison." But Adam interrupts. He takes out his phone and runs his fingers across the screen, saying, "I have every right to be here and every right to request this test." My lawyer says. "Your lawyer?" "You've been talking to your lawyer while I was in labor?" I blurt out. The only indication that he is still capable of feeling guilt is a faint flush that appears on his neck. I've been preparing for this moment for weeks. The word keeps repeating in my mind. Weeks. My husband was organizing this ambush as I was folding little onesies and choosing nursery colors. I feel as though I've been physically struck by the understanding. Bless the nurse, she puts herself in our way. "Sir, perhaps we should continue this discussion outside." "No." I ignore my aching body's protest and push myself to sit up taller. Let him stay. Let him watch the test. Let him see exactly how wrong he is. Something flickers in Adam's eyes, but his expression remains unchanged. Disappointment? Solace? I can no longer tell. I used to be familiar with all telltale signs and micro-expressions. At what point did my husband lose his identity? "I'll set it up right away," Dr. Collins states in a deliberately casual tone. Though I must say, in my 30 years of practice. "Just do it," instructs Adam. I used to find his nervous habit of straightening his tie charming. The sooner we know the truth, the better. The reality. As though he still knows what that word implies. My girl, our daughter, is sleeping soundly in the bassinet, oblivious to the storm that is building all around her. Her dark hair, like mine, is already beginning to curl, and her little fingers are balled into fists. Even though my hands are shaking, I answer, "Fine," in a calm voice. "Do the test. But when it proves what I already know, don't expect forgiveness." His phone buzzes. Adam. He looks at it and his mask briefly comes off. Fear? Feeling guilty? He's on his way to the door before I can comprehend it. He says, "I'll be back tomorrow," without turning around. "My lawyer will contact you about the arrangements." I can breathe again as the door snaps shut behind him. Dr. Collins touches my shoulder tenderly. "McKenna, I'm so sorry." "Don't." I grab my phone, fingers already locating Sam's number. "I'll let my cousin know what to do. He always does. Just get me the paperwork for the test, and Dr. Collins, make sure it's witnessed every step," I respond. His eyes light up with comprehension as he nods. "Of course." I gaze at my daughter once more, committing to memory every exquisite feature of her face. Adam has no idea what he's started, regardless of the game he's playing or the falsehoods he's telling himself. After 3 days in the hospital, Sam feels as though his flat is a haven. As Tara bustles around the kitchen brewing tea, I curl up with Emma on his worn leather couch. My worries are calmed by the familiar smell of coffee grounds and old books, but my hands continue to shake. Saying, "He's changed all the locks," I observe Sam pacing. "Changed the security codes too. 12 years of marriage, and he locks me out like I'm some kind of criminal." With his journalist's notebook already stuffed with scrawled notes, Sam stops pacing. When exactly did things start changing with Adam? Think back carefully. The inquiry is a kind of gut strike. I close my eyes and attempt to remember when my marriage started to go apart. Maybe 4 months ago. He started working late, missing doctor's appointments. Said it was a big merger, the Preston Tech deal. Tara's expression is disturbed as she puts down a mug of chamomile tea. That closed months ago. I give it a quick glance. "How do you know that?" Tara looks at Sam and says, Because my sister works in their PR department. The deal fell through in March. When Adam began bringing pricey new suits home. When the enigmatic business travel started. When he completely stopped caressing me. Sam taps his pen against the notebook and says, "This is what doesn't add up. Why wait until the baby was born to demand a DNA test? Why not do it during pregnancy?" Because he needed a scene, states Tara in a low voice. He needed witnesses. It dawns on me like a blast of cold water. He's building a case against me. Emma stirs in my arms, and I instinctively move her blanket. Her little face reminds me of how calm and trustworthy I used to be. Reluctantly, Sam says, "There's something else." I made some calls. Adam's been meeting with divorce attorneys since January. January, I mumble. Looking down at Emma, I caught myself saying, when I first told him I was pregnant. When he smiled and hugged me and said everything was perfect. That son of a... Why go through with the pregnancy if he was planning this all along? Because of the Harrison family trust, Tara responds accordingly. Your father-in-law's will had specific conditions about heirs, didn't it? Things begin to come together. Even when I say, the trust only pays out if there are legitimate children, my voice sounds empty. He needed proof the baby wasn't his to invalidate the claim. Sam's phone is buzzing. His face darkens as he looks at it. Adam just posted on LinkedIn. He's accepted a new position at Grant Technologies. Grant. The name makes me think of something. Wait, isn't that the company that tried to buy out Harrison Industries last year? Sam concludes. The same one your father-in-law refused to sell to before he died. We all jump when someone knocks on the door. Glancing through the peephole, Tara takes a rapid step back. It's Adam. Don't open it, I say, holding Emma tighter. Adam's words, McKenna, echo through the door. I know you're in there. The DNA test is scheduled for tomorrow morning. My lawyer insists you be present. I take Sam's arm as he approaches the door. Wait. Let him talk. Adam goes on. You're making this harder than it needs to be. His voice becoming almost soft. Just come home. We can work this out. I slowly get to my feet so as not to wake Emma. Work what out, Adam? The lies? The secret meetings? Or how about the trust fund you're trying to steal? Quiet. Then, I don't know what you think you know. I know enough. I no longer tremble when I say this. I know about Grant Technologies. I know about the divorce lawyers. And soon, I'll know everything else too. One more pause. The veneer of tenderness vanishes when he talks again. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Neither do you. Something hardens inside me as I gaze down at our girl, my daughter. Game on, Adam. He backtracks along the corridor. What's the plan? Asks Sam after locking the door and turning to face me. I take my phone out and go through my old contacts until I locate the one I need. First, we find out everything we can about Grant Technologies. And then, I answer the phone. We call in some favors. Before a recognizable voice responds, the phone rings again. Dr. Collins, I need your help with something. With a somber expression, Dr. Collins slips the phone across his desk. These messages were automatically backed up to the cloud account you shared. I thought you should see them. When I take up the smartphone, my hands shake. 2 days before my labor, the timestamp indicates 3:47 a.m. The message says, everything's arranged. Once the test results come back, she won't have any claim to the trust. Make sure you stick to the plan. Adam has responded. She suspects nothing, just keep your father focused on the merger. Evelyn Grant, says Dr. Collins softly, is Marcus Grant's daughter. I find the name to be bitter. Last year, he attempted to compel my father-in-law to sell his business. With his journalistic instincts taking over, Sam leans forward. The same Marcus Grant who mysteriously acquired 3 board seats after your father-in-law's death. I continue to scan through texts, each one getting worse. Plans. Gatherings. Personal information that makes my stomach turn. They've been seeing each other since January, I murmur. The same month I told him about the baby. Sam asserts, the timing is not coincidental. Grant Technologies announced their hostile takeover bid last week. With Adam's help, they'll have controlling interest in Harrison Industries, unless there's a legitimate heir. The parts fit together perfectly. That's why he needs the DNA test. To show Emma isn't his. It's not about the baby at all. It's about the company. We are interrupted by a knock. Tara enters with a pallid face. Adam's here, with lawyers. Even though my heart is racing, I make myself remain composed. Let them in. Adam walks in with 2 suits that probably cost more than my yearly income, as if he owns the place. He's wearing a tie I've never seen before, and he seems different. Colder, sharper. Dr. Collins begins. This is a private medical facility, but Adam interrupts. The elder attorney says, my client has every right to supervise the paternity test that we're conducting. We have concerns about potential tampering. I chuckle. I'm unable to stop it. Tampering? That's rich, coming from you. Adam clenches his jaw. Careful, McKenna, you're already facing potential fraud charges if... I raise the phone and ask, if what? If these messages somehow become public? The ones showing you and Evelyn planning to steal your father's company? He becomes motionless. I catch a glimpse of genuine terror in his eyes. You had access to my private... I go up and exclaim, your private messages on our shared cloud account, my rage giving me courage. The one you forgot to disconnect when you were so busy planning your little corporate takeover. Adam's visage darkens as the younger attorney murmurs something in his ear. He responds, this changes nothing, but his tone falters. The test will proceed exactly as planned. In a strong tone, Dr. Collins interrupts. Under my supervision, with witnesses present. Unless you'd prefer to explain to the board why you're colluding with Grant Technologies while serving as Harrison Industries CFO. Sam moves forward while Adam's hand fumbles with his phone. I wouldn't, answers Sam with ease. My article about corporate espionage at Grant Technologies goes live in an hour. Fascinating stuff about insider trading and family betrayal. Adam responds, you're bluffing, yet his forehead is dripping with perspiration. I approach while speaking quietly. You want a war, Adam? Fine. But remember, you taught me everything about corporate finance during those late-night strategy sessions. Everything. I stop and show him his most recent communication to Evelyn, which was about love and eternity. Always keep receipts. The elder lawyer clears his throat as they look at one another. Perhaps we should discuss terms. No terms, I respond, observing Adam's flawless exterior crumble. No deals. You wanted to play dirty? Let's play. But remember, you're not just fighting for money anymore. You're fighting for survival. Adam's shoulders are stiff with rage as they depart. Sam lets out a faint whistle. That was something. I sit back down and mutter. Just the beginning, as my legs feel like they might give out. Dr. Collins, how long until the test results? 24 hours, he responds, closely examining me. Are you sure about this? Once we start, I interrupt, I'm sure, in a firm voice. I look at the picture of him and my father-in-law during his medical school graduation that is on his desk. He trusted the wrong people. I won't make the same mistake. Sam gives me a shoulder squeeze. What's next? I take out my phone and navigate to a number I never would have imagined using. Next, we talk to Evelyn Grant. It's time she learned what kind of man she's really dealing with. With its sky-high steel and glass, the Grant Technologies lobby shines with riches and power. Feeling small, I shift Emma's carrier on my arm till I see my reflection in the gleaming marble. Adam got me this suit for board meetings, and it's one of his favorite suits. The armor is what counts, even though it fits differently now. The receptionist says, Miss Grant is in a meeting, without even looking up. I say, tell her McKenna Harrison is here, in a firm voice. With her fiancé's baby. Keys no longer click. Her eyes enlarge when she notices Emma's dark locks, which resemble Adam's a lot. Evelyn Grant and I are seated opposite one another in her corner office 5 minutes later. She's younger than I anticipated, and she's immaculately groomed in a way that befits careful breeding and old money. Her 3-carat princess-cut engagement ring, which is identical to the one in Adam's browsing history, catches the light. She claims, I don't understand, but her hands deceive her by twisting a pen till her knuckles turn white. Adam never mentioned a wife, a baby. Emma fusses, but I handle it with practiced ease. Funny how those details slip his mind when he's planning corporate takeovers. The color fades from her face. You can't prove. With screenshots visible, I move my phone across her desk. Actually, I can. The question is, what will your father say when he learns his perfect future son-in-law is still married? That he's using your relationship to manipulate Harrison Industries stock? Evelyn murmurs. You're lying, but she's already using her immaculately manicured finger to browse through the texts. Her expression hardens with each message. The DNA test is tomorrow, I add, observing her expression. Adam's quite confident about the results, almost like he knows something I don't. She glances up abruptly, terror and recognition flickering in her eyes. My phone is buzzing. My blood runs cold after reading Sam's text. Lab break-in last night. Security video was deleted. He wouldn't, Evelyn murmurs, more to herself than to me. Your father's company stands to gain millions if Harrison Industries falls, I say while leaning forward. And Adam stands to gain everything, unless there's a legitimate heir. She snaps the pen in her hands. Her immaculate desk calendar is marred by ink, which stains both merger dates and wedding venue appointments. Get out, she says tremblingly, before I call security. I slowly stand up, drawing Emma next to me. You know what's funny? I ask in a cool yet incisive tone. He bought me that exact same ring 5 years ago. Promised me the same forever. Even used the same pet names. She shouts, I said get out. I quietly remark, check his phone, and stop at the door. The one he keeps in his gym locker. The one with the real messages. She becomes motionless. How did you, when I say, because I was you once, I make my way to the door and then stop again, saying, young, in love, certain he was different. Oh, and Evelyn, when you confront him, watch his left eyebrow. It twitches when he lies. On her broken face, the elevator doors close. I write to Sam, my hands shaking, it's done. Begin the second phase. He responds right away. Tara's lab contact verified attempts at tampering. The test is being moved to a secure location by Dr. Collins. Another message from an unidentified phone appears. When I open it, my heart stops. Clever girl, writes Adam. You can't remember who taught you how to play chess though. Check your email from Harrison Industries. If you don't leave the board within 1 hour, the creative accounting adjustments you assisted me with last year will be made public. It's your turn. I gaze at the screen, reliving the memories of late hours spent poring over spreadsheets, following Adam's instructions, and signing documents he insisted were standard. The realization of how long he has been planning this makes my stomach turn. Emma's little hand catches my finger as she stirs. I see my own resolve, my father-in-law's strength, and something else in her face that Adam never realized was part of the Harrison family's history. I call Dr. Collins. How quickly can you access the original audit files from last year? In response, already done. And McKenna, I found something interesting in your father-in-law's private records, something about a contingency plan. I smile for the first time in days. Tell me everything. With its clean whiteness and security cameras monitoring our every step, the safe lab feels like a fortress. Adam's attorneys hover close by while Dr. Collins stands at the testing station, his countenance unreadable. Emma ignores the stress that permeates the room as she rests in her carrier. When Dr. Collins says, the results will be available in 30 minutes, all parties will remain present. The door flings itself open. With mascara smearing her cheeks and her flawless poise ruined, Evelyn bursts in. I yell, you bastard! Adam takes a step back, his self-assured facade falling off. Evelyn, this isn't, she spits out, the gym locker, and throws her phone to him. It strikes the wall with a crash. 3 other women, and you're still married. The attorneys look at each other in horror. Sam stops him as he goes for his briefcase. Until we hear those results, Sam replies softly. Nobody leaves? Adam's uncomfortable gesture of straightening his tie is something I had nearly forgotten. This is ridiculous. Whatever McKenna told you? Evelyn interrupts him, her voice cracking. She didn't have to tell me anything. Your friend Marcus was quite helpful once I showed him the real numbers behind the Grant Technology merger. Adam's face loses color. You didn't? She smiles sharply and bitterly. Daddy's on his way with the SEC. A message from Tara says, security footage recovered, and my phone vibrates. A suspect in a lab break-in was identified. I give Dr. Collins the phone. After examining the picture, he turns to face Adam's younger attorney. The man begins to perspire. Interesting, says Dr. Collins in a cool but acerbic tone. Very interesting indeed. Adam looks from one of us to the other, calculating. I know the expression he gets when he's going to give up a piece to keep the game going. Adam says abruptly, the accounting irregularities, in a loud voice. McKenna signed off on all of them. She's just as culpable. With the exception of the backup plan, I break off, maintaining eye contact. The one my father-in-law left with Dr. Collins before he died. Adam becomes motionless. What? He knew Adam. About the embezzlement, about Grant Technologies. He documented everything, I add, now speaking steadily. Including your attempts to access Emma's trust fund before she was even born. Clearing his throat, the senior attorney does so. Mr. Harrison, perhaps we should... Shut up. Adam's calmness totally breaks. His fists are clenched as he rounds on me. You're bluffing? Richard trusted me, Dr. Collins adds in a low, uncompromising voice. Not just as his doctor but as executor of his estate, including the real will. The device emits a beep. Test findings are available. Sam stops Adam before he can get the printout. It's over, declares Sam. The SEC has everything: fake DNA test orders, embezzlement records, even your deals with Marcus. The hall reverberates with the sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps. Adam steps back from the entrance. McKenna, he adds as his voice mellows into that accustomed cunning tone. We can still fix this, for Emma's sake. I say. Don't you dare. With words that burn like acid. Don't you dare use our daughter as a bargaining chip. The door opens. First to arrive are two SEC agents and Marcus Grant. Tara holds out her phone behind them, documenting everything. One agent says, Adam Harrison, you are being investigated for securities fraud. The events that follow are shown in slow motion. Adam rushes to the emergency room. The younger attorney tries to stop him. Sam shouts something about treachery. Emma is unaware of the mayhem and sleeps soundly in her carrier while it all. Dr. Collins holds out the test findings while touching my arm. Do you want to know? I look at the paper and go back to all the times I questioned whether Adam was telling the truth or if I had failed as a mother or a wife. I eventually respond, no, as I see my spouse get handcuffed by SEC officers. The results don't matter anymore. She's my daughter. That's all I need to know. Marcus Grant walks up, his expression solemn. Mrs. Harrison, we'll need your testimony tomorrow. I pull Emma in close. Right now, I'm taking my daughter home. I hear Adam yelling my name as we head out, desperate now, realizing what he's lost. I don't turn around. Not every game is worth winning. Some successes come from letting go rather than seeking retribution. Lawyers, testimony, and struggles for control of Harrison Industries are all part of tomorrow. But I've got all I need in my arms tonight. The boardroom at Harrison Industries is cooler than I recall. After the SEC probe was made public, half of the board left, so perhaps that's why there are empty seats. Perhaps it's the way Sam avoids eye contact with me or the way Dr. Collins is constantly looking at his watch. Marcus Grant spreads paperwork across the gleaming table and declares, the evidence is conclusive. The results of the DNA test were changed before they were sent to the lab. Adam's new attorney cuts in with a suave voice, however. Mrs. Harrison was complicit in the financial irregularities, according to my client. Even I sound hollow when I explain, the signature on these documents was forged. I never. Can you demonstrate it? More documents are slid forward by the attorney. The evidence from these trading records indicates otherwise. During the relevant period, there were significant transfers to your personal account. As I recognize the account numbers, my hands shake. It's our joint account, the one Adam ordered I cease keeping an eye on since he had it handled. This is absurd. Sam stands up suddenly. McKenna allegedly approved these transactions while she was on maternity leave. The lawyer has a shark-like smile. Timestamps indicate otherwise. The doctor clears his throat. Marcus Grant continues. The contingency plan has been compromised, his words tumbling like stones. Last night, someone gained access to Richard Harrison's personal documents. Everything is gone. The space whirls. I feel the earth move beneath me as I hold onto the edge of the table. That's not possible. The security procedures were bypassed, the attorney states in a tone that borders on empathetic. Using your login information and some really intriguing emails regarding offshore accounts. My phone is buzzing. I'm shivering after reading Tara's message. Emergency updates. Company stock is plunging. Reports regarding fraud at Harrison Industries' various levels are currently in the news. The DNA test fiasco is causing a lot of conjecture on social media. I can explain, but Adam's attorney raises his hand. He straightens his papers and stands up saying, save it for the SEC hearing. In the meantime, considering the situation, the board has called for an emergency vote of no confidence. You can't. The words grate on my throat. My father-in-law dedicated his life to this business. He had faith in me? Believed you? Adam's voice interrupts, causing me to wince. Despite the ankle monitor indicating his house imprisonment, he stood spotless in the doorway. As if I trusted you not to speak to Evelyn behind my back. You dare not? With ease, he adds. The board needs stability. Someone who can weather this storm with clean hands. Thankfully, I have a deal with the SEC that calls for complete cooperation in return for a lighter sentence. The pieces fit together perfectly. The fake signatures, the corrupted data, and the meticulously crafted paper trail that leads directly to me. You're going to blame me for everything. The realization is bitter. The cover-up, the fraud, all of it. I told Evelyn that. He twitches his left eyebrow. McKenna, you did this to yourself. If you had simply cooperated. Did you play along? I get up so fast that my chair falls over. While you embezzled the inheritance of my daughter? Richard built everything, but you ruined it all? His grin turns ruthless. Regarding that, the initial results of the DNA test were really intriguing. There is silence in the room. Security personnel intervene as Sam approaches Adam. I mutter, "You're lying." But suspicion seeps in like poison. All those late hours at work, the enigmatic business trips, the way he avoided talking about nursery colors or baby names. Am I? He asks as he takes out his phone and displays a test result that I have never seen before. Do you want to know how these genetic markers work? Dr. Collins begins to say something, but Adam's attorney interrupts him. In light of the situation, my client is ready to request complete custody. When evaluating a person's suitability for parenthood, the court typically disapproves of fraud and embezzlement. The world becomes extremely small. I saw Emma's face, her dark locks, her little fingers. Her early giggles and nighttime sobs are audible to me. The only thing that has felt genuine since this nightmare started is the weight of her in my arms. Adam whispers, "In an hour, the board will vote. Sign over your shares, resign immediately, and perhaps we can set up supervised visitation." I sway and Sam takes my arm. Don't, McKenna. My vision is blurry, though, and I'm already reaching for the resignation letter. Sometimes giving up isn't the same as surrender. Sometimes the goal is to purchase time so that you can fight in a different way. At midnight, the atmosphere in Dr. Collins' office is different. His father's medical degrees are shadowed, and our footsteps are obscured by the constant buzz of backup generators. While Tara does her magic on the computer, Sam stands guard at the door. I found it, she murmurs. The initial backup of the server. During the purge, Adam's crew didn't notice it. When I put in the flash drive Richard Harrison gave me years ago, his insurance policy, which I never imagined I'd need, my hands trembled. How much time? With her fingers gliding over the keyboard, Tara responds, 10 minutes to decrypt. If the passwords that your father-in-law used are still valid. The door slams open. Adam is standing there with 2 security officers on either side of him, his ankle monitor glaring accusingly in the dark. He replies, I knew you'd try something desperate, as he enters and adjusts his handcuffs. However, breaking and entering? That will appear awful during the custody hearing. Sam shifts between us. How did you discover? Adam's eyes do not meet his smile. Dr. Collins isn't as devoted as you believed. Everybody has a cost. Like the cost of Evelyn, the words have a harsh taste? Or did she only serve as a stepping stone? For a moment he loses his cool. You're not aware of the stakes. Behind me, Tara whispers. 7 minutes. Adam narrows his gaze. It won't matter what you're attempting to recover. Tomorrow morning, the board will cast its vote. Your resignation has already been handled. As I watch the progress meter creep, I remark, resignations are a funny thing. If they were signed under duress or if the person requesting them is engaging in fraud, they are not valid. He chuckles, but there's a hint of doubt. There is nothing you can prove. 15 minutes, Tara replies. Adam gives the guards a signal. Stop it, right now? I move forward and play my final card, saying, wait. The actual DNA is the outcome. Let me see them. We have experienced this. Either show me, or I send the SEC everything we discover, including every email, transaction, and encounter with Marcus Grant. He twitches his left eyebrow. You're playing a bluff. 3 minutes, declares Tara. The security personnel approach the PC. Sam stiffens, prepared to step in. Adam's words, she's yours, stop everyone cold. The actual DNA test demonstrates that she is yours. I needed leverage, so I changed the outcomes. I just sense clarity, even though the admission should be painful. In any case, you never desired her, did you? She was merely another resource to manage. For 2 minutes, Tara replies. At last, Adam's facade breaks. Do you believe this has to do with a baby? Power is at issue here. Command. All of the promises Richard made to me when he appointed me CFO, I whisper. He promised you a legacy, not a kingdom to steal. A minute. Adam makes a foray towards the computer. Tara shields the screen and Sam stops him. Something, a phone I've never seen before, drops out of Adam's pocket amid the confusion. I pick it up and immediately see the texts. Plans to dismantle Harrison Industries for parts, discussions with Marcus Grant, and something else. Dr. Collins' correspondence. Tara declares gleefully, it's done. Everything has been decoded. Adam becomes motionless. You should avoid opening that file. However, I already am. The room is filled with the voice of Richard Harrison, who made a video confession just days before he passed away. He gives names, explains plans, then offers a last surprise. Now that I finally understand, I tell Adam, the company was never yours to steal. Before he passed away, Richard made a revision to his will. He gave Emma the reins of power. Adam says, trembling, impossible. She was not born at all. I show him the will's date. Adam, he was aware. Almost everything, including the fraud, the affairs, and the agreements with Grant Technologies. You've been playing the exact game he anticipated the entire time. In the distance, police sirens blare. Adam's expression changes to one of rage. You believe you've triumphed? The board, the proof, and your signed confession are still with me. Check your phone, Sam murmurs. The one you just dropped, the real one. Evelyn's father pulling all support, Marcus Grant cutting agreements to save himself, the SEC renewing their investigation, and Dr. Collins sent one last message. I kept my promise, Richard. Adam's eyes widened as the messages poured in. The heritage of your granddaughter is secure. Adam collapses, his empire of lies crumbling around him, as the police storm in. However, I'm already leaving while seeing Emma sleeping soundly at home. Some victories are about defending what's most important, not about winning. The turmoil from last night can still be heard in the Harrison Industries boardroom. The doorway is crossed by police tape, and the conference table where Adam's empire eventually fell apart is covered in evidence markers. Richard Harrison's personal files are in the leather portfolio that Dr. Collins hands me. He murmurs softly, when the time was right, he wanted you to have these. I discover a note inside, buried beneath years' worth of financial documents and business plans. Richard's decisive handwriting is still visible despite the paper's age and the ink's fading. My beloved McKenna, you'll know by now why I picked you to guard Emma's inheritance, not because you're Adam's wife, but because you saw what he couldn't. Stock prices and merger agreements don't measure legacy. It is ingrained in choices, in choosing to defend instead of destroy. Emma is fussy in her job. I reposition her blanket and notice my image in the shadowed windows. Somehow I appear different, stronger, perhaps, or simply more certain. Sam shows up at the door. The SEC wants to take another look at the video testimony. Evelyn Grant is also present. When Evelyn walks in, I anticipate fury, but all I see in her eyes is tiredness. According to her, the board approved the dissolution of the merger attempt. Daddy is resigning? She twists her now ringless fingers and rambles. The scandal. I tell her, I never wanted this. Most of it is true. Neither did I. Her expression softens as she turns to face Emma. He also promised me children, you know. A future in which I genuinely had faith. I respond, I know, since I did the same once. The doctor clears his throat. The new members of the board are ready. They will require guidance about the company's future. Richard's letter about choices and legacies comes to mind. Inform them that we are reorganizing, beginning with the charitable foundation. Funding for programs that assist single parents should be doubled. From where she sits at the computer, already working on the press release, Tara smiles. Our attention is drawn to a disturbance outside. I watch through the glass walls as federal officers carry Adam away, his flawless suit rumpled and his confidence mask finally shattered. He looks at me and begins to say something, but I look away. There are some discussions that are not worthwhile. Dr. Collins pulls out another envelope and says, there's something else. Regarding Emma's trust, your father-in-law left detailed instructions. It's a challenge, not simply money. Projects for community investment must equal every dollar. Finally comprehending, I chuckle. He ensured that the legacy would not be taken. It must be earned. Speaking of income, Sam adds, corporate corruption and the price of truth, an investigative piece that recently went live, although I believe karma in the boardroom, sounded more appealing. I decide, no more karma, as I watch Emma fall asleep. No more retaliation either. Just moving forward. Dr. Collins' eyebrow goes up. And Adam? After closing Richard's portfolio, I said, we face justice through proper channels. I've had enough of his games. Evelyn gets up to go, but stops at the door. She nods to Emma and says, for what it's worth, I think Richard chose well, not just for the company, but for her. When she leaves, I stroll over to Richard's former workplace. His nameplate, which will shortly read Harrison Industries Trust Management, is still displayed on the door. His presence permeates every thoughtfully selected detail inside. One final message, dated the day of his death, is slipped inside his desk calendar. Remember, knowing when to stop is more powerful than knowing when to fight. Fortunately, none of her father's calculations are used when Emma wakes up and demands attention. I pick her up and inhale that wonderful infant smell. Are you prepared to return home? From the doorway, Sam asks. As I grab our belongings, I correct him, not home. Going forward. Reporters wait outside with inquiries concerning scandal and atonement. Lawyers, reorganization plans, and countless decisions regarding Emma's future await us tomorrow. But now, in this silent triumph, I realize what Richard has known all along. Sometimes the best form of retaliation isn't demolishing what other people have created, but rather creating something better out of the ashes they left behind. My mother always defended my older brother, but when he stole my younger brother's fiancée, our family could never be mended. My mother wants me and my brothers to overlook the fact that our younger brother's fiancée was stolen by our cunning golden child older brother. I never imagined that my family would fall apart in this way. A year ago, I would have laughed if someone had predicted that my elder brother, Caleb, would do something so heinous. My mother has always led us to believe that Caleb is the golden child, the one who did everything correctly. However, I can't stop thinking about how we got here as I sit here in my apartment and relive the nightmare that occurred only a few weeks ago. Logan's wedding, or what was meant to be Logan's wedding, was the beginning. Logan, my younger brother, is the most sincere individual I've ever encountered. He is a gentle, considerate man, who would give you his last dollar without hesitation. We were all overjoyed when he proposed to Avery. Avery seemed to love Logan as much as he loved her, and she was intelligent and humorous. Together, they were ideal. They were one of those couples you can tell is meant to be. And then there was Caleb. Even now, the details remain unclear. Logan and Avery were choosing flowers and completing the guest list one week. Avery was canceling the wedding the next week. Logan arrived at my door completely broken, which is why I can still clearly recall that day. His eyes were red-rimmed from sobbing, and his face looked pallid. He informed me that Avery had broken up with him. She simply stated that she couldn't carry it out without providing an explanation. I initially believed it might be chilly feet. Yes, that does happen. Weddings are a stressful event. Then, however, the truth was revealed. Avery and Caleb, who was supposed to be Logan's best man, appeared at a family BBQ less than 3 days later. We were all invited over for family time by my mom, Linda. I wanted to see how Logan was doing because I hadn't seen him since he arrived at my door crying. Caleb holding Avery's hand as they walked into the backyard as if it were the most natural thing in the world is something I will always remember. The whole yard fell silent, as if someone had put life on hold. As I tried to take in what I was seeing, I glanced at Avery and then at Caleb. What on earth is this? Louder than I intended, I asked. The king of smug smiles, Caleb, shrugged as if it didn't matter. He declared, Avery and I are now together. Thankfully, Logan wasn't around, but my sister Riley dropped the pitcher of lemonade she was pouring. The patio's glass broke. I couldn't read my mother's expression as she looked at Caleb, but it wasn't one of shock. For me, that was the first warning sign. Linda had forewarned no one, but she instinctively knew this was happening. You're kidding, I responded, trembling. Avery refused to look at me, so I hoped this was some terrible joke. Her face reddened with guilt, but she continued to stare at the grass. I've detested Caleb's calm-down expression since we were young. In a frustratingly casual tone, he stated, It's complicated, Mason. But everyone will benefit from this. For everybody? I lost my temper. How about Logan? You just took your brother's fiancée, but what about that? The term stole made Avery wince, but Caleb didn't even pause. The relationship between her and Logan didn't work out. This wasn't planned, he said. I made sure he didn't finish though. Too furious to even look at him, I bounded away. Riley came into the kitchen after me. Did you see Mom? She said, trembling. She said nothing at all. She seems to be fine with this. The second warning sign was that Caleb had always held a special place in Linda's heart. Being the eldest, he made the family proud with his corporate career and college degree. Logan and I, on the other hand, were just Logan and me. I used to make a joke about us being the family's spare parts, but it didn't feel humorous anymore. I gave Logan a call later that evening. I asked him if he was aware of Avery and Caleb. He didn't. He sounded hollow when I told him, not even upset. Silently. Of course it was Caleb, he said. It's always Caleb. The consequences were immediate. Riley completely cut all communication with Caleb. He dismissed my attempt to confront him once more, claiming that I was exaggerating. A few days later, my mother contacted me, her voice eerily serene. Mason, we need to talk, she remarked. About what? Still fuming over Caleb and Avery, I inquired. This weekend, we're having dinner at the house. Riley and you should come. It's time to put this behind us. I believed I had misheard her. Move past this? Logan was deceived by Avery. His heart was broken by her. Additionally, Caleb. She gently interrupted me, saying, I know it's hard, but Caleb is still your brother. Despite his error, he is now content. Isn't that the important thing? I couldn't speak. My mother, who was meant to defend us all equally, was once again taking Caleb's side. Riley rolled her eyes as I told her about the dinner. Are you serious? She is attempting to ignore this. Normal. I didn't disagree. Nevertheless, I felt compelled to leave, not for my mother or Caleb, but for Logan. I wanted him to know that he still had support. I was afraid of what I would discover when I arrived at my parents' house on Saturday. Riley was already there, crossing her arms as she sat on the porch. She said, this is going to be a disaster, as I approached. I refrained from arguing. Caleb sat at the dining table as we entered, smiling as if he hadn't just split the family in two. Avery was also present, sitting next to him as if she were a part of the group. At the head of the table, our mother, Linda, was grinning as though nothing was amiss. Come sit, she offered with a cheerful tone. We're going to have a nice family dinner. Riley glanced at me as I gazed at her. I thought I may suffocate since the tension in the air was so heavy. However, as soon as I sat down, the catastrophe started. I was not interested in sitting at the table. To be honest, I wanted to just walk away and flip the fucking thing over. Riley and I had to speak for Logan because he wasn't present. Caleb needed to be called out. What everyone else was too cowardly to say had to be said. With a display of food so spotless that it seemed as though my mother, Linda, believed cooking could clean up this catastrophe, she stood at the head of the dinner table. She was grinning, bringing joy into the space as if she could make it material. Linda said, let's just sit down, eat, and talk. Riley whispered to herself, I'd rather eat glass. As I glanced at her, Avery and Caleb were seated at the far end of the table. The sight of them together still made my blood boil. Avery. As if they were on a freaking date, Caleb had one arm thrown languidly over the back of her chair. However, Avery refused to look at Riley or at me. She continued to look at her dish with her head down, as though the mashed potatoes were the most amazing thing she had ever seen. I inquired, where's Logan? I was surprised at how piercing my voice sounded. I got one of Linda's stoic "you're ruining this" expressions. Logan decided not to come. Riley answered, yeah, no kidding, while crossing her arms. Wonder why? Linda gave her a stern look but remained silent. She probably knew Riley wouldn't give up. Riley has always been the firecracker among us. Even though she is only 2 years my junior, she has never shied away from speaking her mind, particularly when it comes to Caleb. Caleb, who was buttering a roll as if he hadn't just exploded a nuclear bomb in our family, caught my attention. So, Caleb, I replied. You're just okay with all of this? He gave me his angry, calm down face as he gazed up at me. God, I detested that expression. Since we were young, he had been giving it to me as if he were superior, smarter, and older. He questioned, what do you mean by this, Mason? This. I waved my hand at him and Avery and snapped. Caleb, Logan's fiancé, was taken by you? The same Logan who asked you to be his best man because he trusted you enough. With this, are you kidding me? With a heavy sigh, Caleb put down his butter knife, acting as though I was the one who was being unreasonable. Look, Mason, this wasn't planned by Avery and me, and I know it's complicated. It just happened. Things just happened. Riley leaned forward in her chair and scoffed. Is that your justification? You don't just happen to start dating your brother's fiancé? Riley's comments made Caleb cringe, but he didn't raise his head. I was hoping she would stand up for herself and say something, but she just sat there and let Caleb speak. At last, displaying his aggravation, Caleb combed through his hair. I won't just sit here and watch the two of you attack us. I have been open and honest with Avery. We're content together and don't require your blessing. Honest, I fired back. You believe your treatment of Logan was sincere? You lacked the courage to tell him directly. Avery had to inform him when she decided to call off the wedding. That's enough. Across the table, Linda's voice could be heard. Mom gave me that familiar scowl of disapproval, the same one Mom used to talk back to me when I was a child. We are not going to spend this dinner yelling at each other like children. Riley pushed her dish away and said, then maybe Caleb shouldn't have acted like one. Linda replied, Riley, please, in a strained voice. This isn't beneficial. The reason Caleb and Avery are here is to continue their family's journey. We must all extend forgiveness and move on from this. Forgive and let this go? Unable to believe what I was hearing, I gazed at her. So you're just okay with this? Slowly, I asked. You're okay with what Caleb did to Logan? Linda's expression softened, as though she were addressing a young kid who was just unable to comprehend the world. Life is complex, Mason. Despite their mistakes, people should have the opportunity to be happy. Happy? Riley's fist slammed on the table as she burst. Logan is wretched, Mom. You're behaving as if none of this is important. You're here acting like a hostess like it's Thanksgiving dinner after Caleb made him feel embarrassed. With his chair scuffing the wooden floor, Caleb got to his feet. You know what? I don't have to sit here and have my home attacked. I've finished our talk. I yelled, sit down, in a low menacing voice that even surprised me. I was so tired of Caleb walking away from everything. Responsibility, consequences. Logan, you don't get to walk in here with Avery like nothing happened and then act like we're the problem. At last, Avery raised her voice, but it was tremulous and quiet. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I turned to her, and so did Riley. I questioned, my rage mixed with incredulity. Then why did it? Avery seemed to be waiting for approval before speaking as she glanced at Caleb. She inhaled deeply when he remained silent. Caleb and we started talking months ago. At first, it was innocent but... She paused. He told me things about Logan. Things that made me doubt everything. What things? Asked Riley. Avery stumbled over her words. He said Logan didn't really love me, that he was just going through the motions because he felt like he had to settle down. Caleb... I froze as everything came together. For months, Caleb had been sowing doubt in Avery's mind. That was his personality. Attractive, cunning, and self-centered. Riley responded, You've got to be kidding me, in a disgusted tone. You let Caleb convince you Logan didn't love you? Logan adored you, Avery. Everyone could see it. Avery winced, but Caleb moved ahead of her while speaking in a chilly tone. We're not going to sit here and let you two attack Avery. This conversation is over. Fine, I responded as I got to my feet. Then I guess I'll have this conversation with Logan instead. I'm sure he'll love hearing how his own brother was working behind the scenes to sabotage his relationship. Linda began. Mason. But I interrupted her. I turned and left, Riley following closely after me. Logan deserves better than this, Mom. And if you can't see that, then I don't know what to tell you. Riley released a breath that she had obviously been holding as soon as the front door closed behind us. She mumbled. Unbelievable. Caleb's not even sorry. He believes his own lies. I didn't respond. What Avery had revealed about Caleb getting into her head and manipulating her emotions had my head spinning. This was no fortuitous romance. For some reason, Linda was ignoring the fact that Caleb had been planning this for months. Riley turned to face me as we entered her vehicle and said, We have to tell Logan. I know, I replied. But I don't think this ends here. And I was correct. It didn't. Riley's engine hummed through the peaceful ride to Logan's place. She remained silent, and I did too. The identical thought was running through both of our minds. How in the heck were we going to explain this to Logan? Avery calling off the wedding was one thing, but what about knowing that Caleb had been deceiving her for months? That seemed like a completely different animal. I kind of thought Logan wouldn't respond when we arrived at his house. With the exception of the occasional text, he had remained a phantom ever since the split. However, the door slowly opened, revealing Logan staring at us with black circles under his eyes. He appeared slimmer, as if he hadn't eaten. He said, Hey, in a low voice. Didn't think I'd see you guys tonight. I said. Can we come in? After a moment of hesitation, Logan moved aside to allow us to enter. The flat appeared as worn out as he was. The curtains were drawn, his couch appeared to be his bed these days, and takeout containers were piled on the coffee table. Logan laughed without laughter when he saw that I was staring. Yeah, I know it's a mess. Take a seat, he said, sweeping papers from the cushions and pointing to the couch. Logan remained standing, leaning against the wall with his arms folded, while Riley and I sat. He appeared protective, as though he was aware that we weren't just stopping by. What's up? He finally inquired, his gaze darting between us. Riley didn't hold out. Logan, we need to tell you something about Caleb. Logan stiffened as soon as she spoke Caleb's name. His eyes widened and his jaw tensed. I don't want to talk about him. I whispered. You need to hear this. It's about what really happened with Avery. Her name made Logan cringe. I thought he was going to throw us out, but he sat down in the armchair across from us after letting out a trembling breath. Fine, he replied. Say whatever you came here to say. I didn't mince words. Despite the pain, Logan deserved to know the truth. Avery told us tonight that Caleb had been talking to her for months. He told her things that made her believe you didn't really love her. At first, Logan's expression remained unchanged. He remained motionless as he gazed at me. He gently averted his gaze and squeezed his fists against his thighs, but I wasn't even positive he had heard me. He spoke the words. So Caleb convinced her to leave me, in a whispery tone. Manipulated her, said Riley again. He played with her head. Logan, she stated. She thought you were just settling for her because Caleb got in her ear. Logan gave a sour laugh, but it was devoid of humor. Of course he did. That's Caleb. He's always been good at taking things that don't belong to him. I was astonished by the hostility in his voice. Logan has consistently maintained our family's composure. Logan is the quiet anchor if Riley is the firework and I am the middle child who is always caught in the between. He is not angry. He simply becomes depressed. Now though, he now had an angry expression. He's done this before, Logan stated abruptly as he looked at the ground. Riley said, What do you mean? Logan's expression darkened as he looked up. Do you honestly believe that this is the first time Caleb has taken anything that was rightfully mine? Do you recall my senior school soccer tryout? Logan inquired. While attempting to piece things together, I scowled and said, Yeah, you didn't make the team. No, I did, Logan said with a sour smile. Caleb persuaded the coach that he would be a better option and that I was unreliable, even though I made the squad. It took me years to find out. While Caleb made varsity, I was dismissed. What? Riley's eyes widened. Why didn't you say anything, Logan? Because nobody would have believed me, he shrugged, adding, Caleb has always been the one. The golden boy is Caleb. Caleb is impervious to error. After hearing this, something clicked in my mind. Caleb had been our mother's world for years, charming, ambitious, and self-assured, everything an ideal oldest son should be. However, now that the cracks were showing, it became clear that he didn't just take things because he wanted them. He did it to win, to show that he was superior to the rest of us. Logan, I continued slowly, what do you suppose caused him to do this to Avery now? Logan gave me a dumbfounded look and said, Because he could. I've always made Caleb envious. It's not over. He does a good job of hiding it. Like he's taken everything else, I believe he decided to take away Avery after realizing how happy I was with her. Logan was right. This wasn't just about Avery. It was about Caleb needing to repeatedly demonstrate that he was the best, regardless of who he injured along the way. There was a brief period of silence. Riley appeared to want to punch a wall, and I felt sick to my stomach. Logan wiped his face and said, You know what's the worst? I cherished her. I cherished her dearly. I also had faith in Caleb. I assumed he was pleased with me. I muttered, I'm sorry, since I had no idea what else to say and it seemed so hollow. You don't have to apologize to me, Logan said, shaking his head. Please let me know what you plan to do about it. Riley grimaced. What are you saying? Logan's voice was harsh as he stated, I mean, Caleb isn't done? You think he's simply going to stop after this? Mom is already on his side. I'm the bad one for not letting it go, but he'll keep making things up until the rest of the family forgives him. He acts in that manner. Riley and I looked at each other, and Logan was right. I hate to say it, but our mother was already setting the stage for us to go over this, and if we didn't do something, Caleb would win, as he usually does. Riley stated, Mom needs to see what's going on, so we need to talk to her. She cannot continue to stand up for him. Good luck with that, said Logan, snorting. Until the day she passes away, Mom will stand up for Caleb. Your time is being wasted. Linda had always made excuses for Caleb, perhaps because he was the firstborn or because he reminded her of herself, but whatever the reason, she had been ignoring Caleb's behavior for years, and it had finally come to this point. I didn't want to believe that, but I knew deep down that Logan wasn't wrong. One thing was clear to me as I watched my younger brother sit in his damaged apartment, though. Caleb was not going to get away with this time. I firmly stated, this time, we're not going to let him win. After giving me a long look, Logan nodded and said, Good. Because I'm tired of being a punching bag for Caleb. I sensed a change in myself as Riley and I left Logan's apartment that evening. I was done being kind, done letting Caleb bully everyone while Linda applauded him, and it was time to face Caleb head on. This time, I wasn't going to hold back. Riley and I quickly decided what needed to happen next. Caleb needed to be confronted, really confronted, and not just about Avery. This was about everything that Caleb had been doing for years, including manipulating people, twisting circumstances, and making himself appear like the ideal son while ignoring the rest of us. Logan was correct. Caleb wouldn't stop unless he was forced to, and we were going to force him. When Riley and I unexpectedly arrived at our parents' house the following morning, Linda opened the door, looking astonished to see us and as though she had been up all night worrying. To be honest, good. Her grin was forced. Mason, Riley, she continued. What are you doing here? We need to talk to Caleb, I said as I walked into the living room, sweeping past her. Linda groaned deeply as she shut the door, and Riley trailed behind me. This again? Can't you just, she asked, her voice already worn out. Riley interrupted, turning to stare at her saying, No, Mom. We can't. Is Caleb present? I inquired. He's upstairs, but I don't know why you, Linda said after hesitating, then nodded. Perfect, I murmured as I made my way up the stairs. Linda called after me and said, Mason. Don't start anything. Linda had let Caleb for too long, and it was time for someone to do what she wouldn't do, so I disregarded her. I didn't care what Linda thought at this point. Caleb was sitting on his bed with his laptop open when Riley and I marched up the stairs and down the hallway to his old bedroom. The door was half open, so we didn't bother knocking, and I pushed it open. His face twisted into a mixture of smugness and annoyance when he looked up and saw us. To whom am I due this distinction? Here to lecture me some more? Caleb replied, leaning back against the wall and shutting his laptop. I crossed my arms and remarked, We're here for answers, not to lecture you. I've already explained everything, Caleb said, rolling his eyes. I didn't plan this with Avery, it just happened. Why aren't you all able to accept that and go on? Because it's a lie, Riley said. Avery told us that you had been peeping into her head for months. You were ruining her friendship with Logan the entire time, Caleb. Even as Caleb's face reddened, his arrogant look persisted. So? What? Relationships are always ending. Logan's inability to retain her is not my fault. You think this is a game, don't you? I said, stiffening my fists at my sides as I walked toward him. You're not even sorry for what you did. Why would I? Logan was never right for Avery, Caleb retorted. I was kind to her. You took her. Riley screamed. You can't stand seeing other people happy, so you tricked her into leaving Logan. Watch it, Riley, Caleb said as he got to his feet, his face changing to a more icy one. You have no idea what you're discussing. I answered softly. Oh, we know precisely what we're talking about. Caleb, you've been doing this for years. Stealing what belongs to Logan, undermining him, and claiming to be the golden child while the rest of us suffer as a result. You're being dramatic. Caleb grinned. Am I? Logan told us about the soccer team, how you persuaded the coach to cut him so you could take his place. I shot back. Does that sound familiar? For a brief moment Caleb's grin wavered, but he immediately got back to it. That was years ago. Who gives a damn? Logan is concerned. Just like you ruined this, you ruined that for him, Riley yelled. Caleb chuckled, but it was a mocking, bitter laugh. You guys are unbelievable, he said. Do you believe that I am the bad guy? Logan is pitiful. He was and always has been. He allows others to walk all over him because he is weak. Avery chose me because I'm superior to him. I didn't steal her. Riley stepped forward and poked a finger at Caleb's chest, saying, You're not better than anyone, Caleb. Even though I could feel my fury boiling. The only reason you get away with being a manipulator and a liar is because Mom allows it. Caleb snarled. Leave Mom out of this. Why? Riley retorted. We all know you're her favorite. No matter what you do, she will stand up for you. Linda suddenly materialized in the doorway. What's happening in here? With a strong voice, she demanded. Riley turned to stare at her and added, Ask your perfect son. Adding that he had recently confessed to coercing Avery into leaving Logan. Linda turned to face Caleb as her face went white. Is that true? Of course not. Caleb answered softly, his voice flowing. Mom, they're misrepresenting what I said. I didn't do it. You claim that Avery picked you because you're superior to Logan, Riley yelled. Linda's expression was unreadable as she turned to face Caleb, who gave her a wide, naive look, as he often did when he had to get out of trouble. Come on, Mom, you are familiar with me, I would never act in such a manner. For a while, I hoped that Linda would finally recognize Caleb for who he truly was, but she hesitated, and I could see the doubt in her eyes. Then, as usual, she folded. Her voice was tense as she replied, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. We're not going to solve anything by yelling. Riley laughed bitterly and said, It's unbelievable. You continue to protect him. I'm not defending anyone, Linda responded. But I'm not going to let this family fall apart over a relationship that didn't work out. This family already is falling apart, I whispered quietly. And it's because of Caleb. Caleb looked bored and shrugged, saying, "Cry about it." I finished our talk. Riley snapped, "No. We're done with you." What is the intended meaning of that? Caleb narrowed his brows and asked. I said, "Logan's done. It means we're not letting you win this time. Riley is finished. I am too. You're by yourself. You can't just cut me out of the family," Caleb said, looking truly shaken for the first time. "Watch us," replied Riley icily. "Mom, you can act like Caleb is flawless all you want, but the rest of us aren't playing along anymore," I said, turning to Linda, who appeared stunned. "Either you're with us or you're with him. You make the decision." Linda gave me a slap-like look and said, "You can't ask me to choose." Riley remarked softly, "You simply aren't aware that you've already made your decision." I believe that Caleb recognized that he had finally lost control and pushed himself too far, since he didn't say anything as we were leaving, and for once, he didn't have a smug response or a lazy shrug. I was relieved as Riley and I left the house because, although Caleb might not be facing actual repercussions today, he would eventually. People like him usually do, and I wasn't going to be there to catch him when he fell for the first time. After that altercation, we didn't hear from either Caleb or Linda for a few days. To be honest, I believe they were both waiting for us to return, as we always did, especially with Linda. In our family, things had always gone like this. Caleb made a mistake, Mom covered it up, and the rest of us had to keep our mouths shut for the sake of keeping the peace, but not this time. You have no idea how long I felt like I was screaming into a void, I added, and Logan actually appeared glad when we told him about what had transpired at the home. "It's about time," he muttered, shaking his head. Riley and I had made our decision. Linda made several attempts to contact us over the course of the following week, first by phone and then by text, but each message was the same. "Family doesn't behave like this, so we need to communicate. Caleb is your brother, and while I understand your anger, this has gone too far. You don't fully comprehend the story. Let's discuss this over dinner." We chose to ignore her. Riley, Logan, and I were all on the same page for the first time, and it felt liberating. Caleb was no longer our responsibility, so we didn't have to comply if Linda wanted to hold on to him. Caleb wasn't finished though. On a Thursday night, I received a call from an unknown number. I don't typically accept such, but for some reason, I decided to answer. "Hello, Mason." I remained silent for a moment, almost expecting Caleb to knock on my door, but I was still taken aback when I heard his voice. It sounded desperate, not cocky or arrogant. "What are you looking for?" With a flat voice I asked. Caleb hurriedly continued. "I need to talk to you. It's important." "Hard pass." His voice trembled. "Mason, please." And I was shocked because Caleb demanded things instead of asking for them. I answered, against my better judgment. "All right. Don't talk on the phone. In an hour, meet me at the depot, please." I didn't want to attend, but I couldn't get rid of the feeling that something wasn't right. The depot was an old diner we used to frequent as kids, and it felt strangely symbolic, as if Caleb was trying to exploit some shared history to guilt me into listening. I didn't recognize Caleb for a moment when I entered the depot an hour later and saw him sitting at a booth in the corner. He had bags under his eyes as if he hadn't slept in days, and his normally flawless hair was unkempt. "Caleb, what do you want?" I questioned, slipping into the seat across from him. He didn't immediately respond, instead looking down at the table with his fingers tapping nervously. "I messed up," he finally stated in a hushed voice. With a sour laugh, I said, "Yeah, no kidding." "No, Mason, I made a huge mistake, more than you thought." I had never seen Caleb this afraid, and there was something about the way he said it that made the hair on the back of my neck rise up. "What are you discussing?" I inquired. After inhaling deeply, Caleb shakily exhaled. "I'm in trouble. Bad luck." I saw panic for the first time in his eyes as he glanced up at me. "What sort of issue?" With quivering fingers, Caleb ran a hand through his hair and nodded. Debt. I owe a lot of people a lot of money. Mason, I made an effort to correct it, but it got out of hand." His voice broke as he trailed off. Avery ... "What are you saying?" I asked, feeling sick to my stomach. I think I've never seen Caleb seem so embarrassed as he looked at me. "I needed money," he said. "I reasoned that by getting to know Avery better, I might be able to persuade her to assist me. Her family is wealthy, so I reasoned that perhaps—" "You made use of her?" Startled, I cut in. You used Avery as leverage because of your debt? Despite his recoil, Caleb said, I didn't intend for it to get this far. Although I didn't anticipate her leaving Logan for me, I was unable to stop it once it got going. Caleb had not simply taken Logan's fiancée because he wanted to win, he had done it out of desperation. He had played with Avery's emotions, ruined Logan's life, and split our family apart in order to hide the catastrophe he had created for himself. I gazed at him, trying to take in what he had just said. Is Mom aware? Quietly, I inquired. No, and she can't, Caleb said, shaking his head. If she learns, I'm finally able to recognize you for who you truly are. Good, I responded sourly. She is entitled to the truth. Caleb's voice was suddenly begging, please, Mason, I need your assistance. I have no other people. Aid you? I chuckled incredulously. Are you serious? After all of your actions? Caleb said. You're my brother. Family is meant to stay together. Don't you dare pull the family card, I responded. You don't get to hide behind that after what you did to Logan. Like a drowning man pleading for a life raft, Caleb gazed at me and said, please. Without you, I am unable to resolve this. I felt nothing for Caleb for the first time in my life, no rage or hatred, just emptiness. He was no longer my brother, he was just a man who had ruined every relationship he had ever had. I got up and said, Caleb, you need help, but it won't come from me. Caleb started to disagree, but before he could say anything more, I left. Later that night, Riley, Logan, and I convened at my place, and for once, no one was shocked when I told them all Caleb had confessed. Logan said, he's always been like this. It just took him this long to fall apart. How about Mom? Should we tell her? Riley said. After giving it some serious thought, I shook my head and said, no. She's made up her mind. Let her if she wants to think Caleb is flawless. We're done with him though, alongside her. With everything. I had spent my entire life trying to keep this family together, but now I know that sometimes you have to let things fall apart. For the first time in years, I felt free. Neither Linda nor Caleb were my burden anymore. With a small smile on his lips, Logan turned to face Riley and me and said, you think we'll be all right? Yeah, I replied with a smile. We'll be all right. And I did believe it for once. My family always relied on me financially, but when I stopped helping, they turned me into the villain. After years of supporting my family, I was expelled and accused of being selfish. There have been other occasions over the years when I felt ignored, such as birthdays when Mark would receive the pricey presents while I received something useful like new socks or a coat, or vacations when his family had all the attention while I sat quietly on the sidelines. It didn't matter, I told myself. I assumed that was just the nature of parents. In addition, I had always been self-sufficient. I didn't require the attention or the hype. Things changed even further once Mark married Becky and had his first son, Jason. Mark was suddenly more than simply the favorite, he was the one who brought us grandchildren. Now that they could proudly call themselves grandparents, my parents were ecstatic, feeling as though their lives had been completed. Though I couldn't help but feel a little invisible in my own family, I was also pleased for him. I dismissed it though, since family helps family, as I've always told myself. This is where it all began to go south. Mark lost his job at the conclusion of the previous year. His business was among the first to close when the small retail chain he worked for began closing its sites. It was awful. I was genuinely sorry for him. I recall Becky sobbing when she called my parents, concerned about how they would make ends meet on her meager part-time bakery salary. They were devastated to lose Mark's paycheck since, shocking as it may seem, he wasn't the best with money. However, my parents' solution was to ask him, Becky, and their 2 children to move in with them rather than helping him come up with a practical strategy to get back on his feet. It may seem acceptable on paper. Family stays together through difficult times, and they have room. The space they so kindly offered was mine, and that was the problem. It took place on a Sunday evening. I had just returned from a lengthy work trip, fatigued, and all I wanted was a bed and a shower. I sensed something was wrong the moment I went through the door. At the kitchen table, my parents were waiting for me. Dad was silent as usual, tinkering with his watch, and Mom had her typical worried expression. Sarah, honey, we need to talk, Mom remarked. Suddenly tense, I sat down after dropping my bag beside the door. Mother didn't mince words. You know how hard things have been for your brother since he lost his job. He's got Becky and the kids to worry about, and they really don't have anywhere else to go. My heart sank. I could already see where this was going. Even though I knew the answer before I spoke, I nevertheless inquired, "So where are they going to stay?" Mom's smile was as if she had practiced it 100 times. "The basement suite is perfect for them. It's separate from the main house, so they'll have their privacy. Becky and the kids will be comfortable there." I glanced at her, attempting to take it all in. "Wait, my basement suite? Where am I supposed to go?" Dad spoke up at last, although in a hushed tone. "We've set up the hobby room for you. It's cozy. You'll have plenty of space." What I was hearing was unbelievable. It was a glorified closet, the hobby room. It housed Mom's sewing machine, containers of seasonal decorations, half-finished projects, and stacks of fabric. It wasn't a bedroom at all. In the hopes that this was some strange prank, I asked, "You're kidding, right?" Mom became defensive in her tone. "It's only temporary, Sarah. Besides, this is our house, and we need to make decisions that benefit the family as a whole. You'll be fine in the hobby room for now." It was the old-fashioned statement. "It's our house." I sat there in startled silence as the talk came to a close, and my parents congratulated themselves on their generosity and helpfulness. I was not a big argue. What was the purpose? I didn't like it, but Mark was moving in. Neither my comfort nor my space mattered. That evening, I packed up my laptop, clothes, and toiletries. I gazed at my tiny suite in the basement, which I had turned into my home in recent years. It was mine, even though it wasn't flawless. I had my favorite scented candles, comfortable blankets on the couch, and bookshelves full of literature. It was all being torn away from me now to make room for Mark and his family. They didn't even ask, which was the worst part. It was determined for me, as if my opinions were completely irrelevant, and there was no discussion, no family gathering, and no, "Sarah, how do you feel about this?" Not in the hobby room, not in a house where I was obviously only a supporting part in someone else's story. I knew by the next morning that I couldn't stay. I therefore devised a strategy. I reserved a reasonably priced all-inclusive resort in the Florida Keys for the 2 weeks I had off in between job trips. It wasn't elegant, but it was less expensive than buying food and paying $1,600 for a property I no longer even lived in. It also included calm and tranquility, 2 things I really needed. My parents seemed uninterested in my plan when I informed them about it. The actual turmoil didn't start until I left, even though Mom responded, "Well, if that's what you need to do." My phone buzzed 2 days into my vacation at the resort. It was Mom's message. "Mom. Hey Sarah, where's the money for rent and groceries this month? We're counting on it to help support Mark and the kids." Speechless, I gazed at the letter. She couldn't be serious, surely. When I gave her a call back, we had a conversation that went something like this. "Mom, I don't live there anymore. Why would I pay rent?" "Because we're still a family, Sarah. You know we're all in a bind right now, and Mark needs that space more than you do. But you gave away my space. I'm not even there." At that point, Dad called, his voice firmer than normal. "You can't just leave your family hanging like this. We raised you better than that." Talking to a wall was like that. They insisted on the same thing no matter what I said. I was self-centered. I was leaving my family behind. I also had a responsibility to Mark's troubles. Then Mark called and added his voice. "Sarah, you don't understand. I have a family to take care of. You don't need the space like we do." I lost my temper. "Mark, when you had your job, did you ever send Mom and Dad money to help out?" "No, you spent it all on yourself. So why am I supposed to bail you out now?" That temporarily silenced him. I was trembling with rage by the time the call was over. I had been the one keeping everything together for years, taking care of my parents, making the payments, and being the responsible one. For what purpose? To be ejected from my personal space and accused of selfishness for standing my ground. I came to a realization at that point. This was no longer about supporting my family, it has to do with control. They betrayed me after I declined to play a part they had never asked me to play. Out of guilt, I sent Mom $400 for food, but that was all. I would no longer continue to support their lives at the price of myself. I was unaware at the time that this was only the beginning. The whole family would be rocked by my determination to defend myself, and I would never have encountered such a strong reaction. After I refused to continue paying for a place I no longer occupied, things quickly fell apart. I had no idea how far my parents and the rest of my family would go to keep me in line, even if I felt the guilt trip during that initial phone call was awful. The Florida Keys all-inclusive resort was meant to be my haven, a place where I could relax and get my mind straight. I wasn't spending $1,600 a month in a basement suite from which I had been evicted, for once. Everything I needed was there in the small bungalow I rented: good meals, a view of the pool, and most importantly, tranquility. It was like a taste of freedom, something I had been longing for but had not even understood. However, that tranquility was short-lived. My phone was constantly buzzing with missed calls and texts on the third day of my visit. Mom. Sarah, we're disappointed in you. This isn't what family does. Dad. It's not fair to leave us hanging like this. Are you only concerned with yourself, Mark? Every communication was like a kick to the gut. It was obvious that Mark had joined my parents' campaign to wear me down since they were unrelenting. At first, I didn't respond to any of them. The texts continued, despite my assurances that I needed time and that they would ultimately stop bothering me. Then came the phone calls. Out of pure exasperation, I picked up once, only to hear Mark's voice on the other end. His tone was accusatory, as if he had practiced the question. You know what you're doing to Mom and Dad, right? They're struggling. The house is too expensive, and now they're trying to help me and my family. You're making it worse by leaving. I don't get how you can be so selfish. What I was hearing was unbelievable. Selfish? I asked again, attempting to remain composed. You took my space, Mark. I'm not even living there anymore. Why would I keep paying for something I don't have? It's not about space, Sarah. It's about family. I have kids to think about, and you don't. You should be helping out more, not running away. Its daring was astounding. Here was my brother, who had mismanaged his finances for years, telling me that I owed him money to support his children. I ended the call. At the time, that was the only answer I could come up with. I was beginning to feel like I couldn't get out at the end of the week. Even though my parents lived in Riverside, 1,000 miles away, their comments followed me everywhere. There was a new message waiting for me each time I looked at my phone. The tone fluctuated, at times expressing rage, guilt, or an odd mix of the two. Mom. Sarah, think of Jason and the kids. They're just little boys. Do you really want them to suffer because you're being stubborn? Dad. You owe it to us. We took care of you when you were younger, now it's your turn. Mark. You'll regret this when the kids remember how their aunt turned her back on them. Nor were the texts the only thing. My extended family became interested. I began receiving calls from relatives I hardly knew, Uncle Gary, Aunt Linda, and others I hadn't spoken to in years. Aunt Linda? Sarah. Honey, she said on a single call. I'm sure you don't mean to upset your parents like this. They've done so much for you. Can't you just help a little longer? Mark really needs it right now. I felt like screaming. Bitterly, I thought, a little longer? What was the slightly longer duration? 1 more month? A year? Forever? I had been paying more than my fair share for years, but nobody seemed to care. The day following my return from the Keys was the last straw. I was in the middle of unpacking when my little Columbus apartment was knocked on. My parents were standing there when I opened it. With a heavy folder gripped in her hands, Mom appeared worn out but resolute. Although his presence loomed like a silent threat, Dad remained mute as usual. Stunned, I said, Mom, Dad, what are you doing here? Mom exclaimed, we need to talk, as she walked into the living room, sweeping by me. I was forced to let them in after Dad pursued her. As if they owned the place, they took a seat on my couch. Mom began laying out documents on the coffee table after opening the folder. I knew right away what they were: supermarket receipts, repair estimates, and utility bills. Sarah, she said, we can't do this without you. Look at these expenses. The mortgage is still due, the roof needs repairs before winter, and Mark's kids need school supplies. We need your help. Stunned, I gazed at her. I'm not living there anymore. Why should I pay for any of this? Dad yelled. Because you're part of this family. At last. Family sticks together when times are tough. You don't just run off because things get hard. I could feel my anger erupting. You didn't ask me, Dad. You didn't ask how I felt about giving up my space. You just decided for me, and now you want me to keep paying for it? That's insane. Even if Mom's tone softened, the manipulation was obvious. Honey, think of Jason and Liam. They don't understand why their aunt isn't helping. We just want to keep this family together. For me, that was the turning point. This had nothing to do with groceries, the mortgage, or even Mark's children. Control was at issue here. I was always supposed to be the good girl, the responsible daughter who would keep everything running smoothly, according to my parents. And they had no idea how to respond now that I wasn't complying. I got up and gestured to the door. I think you should go. Mom's eyes got big. Sarah. No, I cut in. I'm serious. You need to go. Dad appeared truly astonished for the first time. They never expected me to resist, I believe. Mom remarked, we're just trying to do what's best for the family, as they walked slowly to the door. I didn't answer. I locked the door after they had left. Then I sat trembling on the couch. My family's expectations, my personal wants, the years I'd spent being the good daughter, and the covert sacrifice of my financial independence so they could live comfortably were all on my mind as I lay awake that night. I realized then that I had been facilitating this scenario for years. They became reliant on me as soon as I began making money. They expected more from me the more I contributed. Mark's poor life management was not my fault, and I had no obligation to correct it. However, liberation was not going to be simple. I told my parents to back off, but they weren't going to do it. I would have to battle for my life if I wanted it back. At that point, I decided. I would continue to assist them when I could, but I would no longer allow them to dictate how I behaved. If I didn't live in the house, I wouldn't pay for it. I wouldn't feel bad about refusing to pay Mark's mortgage or his children's school supplies. I texted Mom one final time the following morning. I can't continue to pay for everything, even though I love you. I'm not an ATM, but I'll assist when I can. Please be mindful of that. In less than an hour, the response was received. Mom, I can't believe you're doing this to us, Sarah. We're family. I didn't respond. I felt like I was regaining control of my life for the first time in years. I foolishly believed that I had seen the worst of it, that perhaps, just perhaps, they would give me some breathing room after my parents' surprise visit and the onslaught of guilt-tripping texts. I was mistaken. In my family, it turns out that advocating for yourself is the same as declaring war. It creates a full-fledged tsunami rather than simply a ripple. The next stage of this conflict was a virtual family gathering, where everyone with a phone and an opinion had a front-row ticket to my crucifixion, in typical Evans family manner. An email was the first step. Mom. Sarah, we've scheduled a family meeting for this Sunday at 3 p.m. It's important. Your aunts, uncles, and cousins will be there, please don't miss it. Of all the passive-aggressive things I had ever read, that please, was it? A meeting with the entire family? It was unbelievable to me. Was it really their intention to humiliate me by gathering the whole extended family? Did they believe that I might be fixed in some way by a mass ambush? I nearly forgot to log in. I considered completely disregarding it and letting them all shout into space, but I knew deep down that doing so would only serve to strengthen their story. Sarah's avoiding us because she knows she's wrong. I therefore set an alarm for 2:55 p.m., with a terrible feeling in my stomach, and joined the video conference. My parents, Brother Mark, Aunt Linda, Uncle Gary, Cousin Rachel, and a few more relatives who only ever showed up at weddings and Christmas dinners were all present when the screen loaded. I glanced at the squares on the screen, and I could tell from the reticent looks that I was going to be put to the death. The first person to speak was Mom, and she wasted no time in doing so. Her voice was filled with fake concern, as if I were a lost child rather than an adult who dared to put herself first. Sarah, we're all here because we're concerned about you and the decisions you've been making lately. I remained quiet as they planned their speech. The next 30 minutes were a haze of guilt-tripping and accusations from all sides of the screen. Aunt Linda's response. Sarah, we're all family here. You can't just turn your back when people are struggling. Mark and the kids need support right now. We all pitch in when times are tough. Uncle Gary says, your parents have done everything for you. Now, when it's your turn to step up, you're acting like it's too much to ask. Family comes first. Aunt Rachel. I want to be independent, but you don't just cut off your family. That's not how we were raised. Naturally, Mark then added his voice. Do you know how hard it is for Becky and me right now? The kids don't understand why their aunt suddenly doesn't care about them. Jason asked me the other day why you don't want to see them anymore. What am I supposed to tell him? It was a powerful blow. Although I adore my nephews, Mark was well aware of his actions. He was using them as a weapon against me, manipulating the circumstances to paint me as a cold-blooded monster. After what seemed like hours, they finally gave me the opportunity to speak. Despite my trembling palms, I inhaled deeply and unmuted myself. Look, I remarked, attempting to maintain a steady tone. I love this family. I do. And I've been helping for years. Paying rent, paying for groceries, doing whatever I could to keep things running. But this is too much. Mom's expression tightened, but I persisted. I'm not living at home anymore. You gave my space away without even asking me, and now you're expecting me to keep paying for it. That's not fair. You're all acting like I'm abandoning you, but I'm just trying to take care of myself for once. There was silence in the room. I wasn't done yet, but I could see Mom shaking her head and getting ready to respond. Mark, I uttered while looking straight at his video square. You're my brother, and I care about you, But you've never been responsible with your money. When you had a job, did you send money to mom and dad to help out? No, you spent it on yourself. And now, when you're in trouble, suddenly I'm the bad guy for not bailing you out. Despite his hot face, Mark remained silent. I added, and the rest of you, as I turned to face my extended family. Where were you when I was the one keeping everything afloat? None of you had anything to say when I was paying $1,600 a month for a basement suite I only lived in half the time. But the second I draw a boundary, suddenly I'm selfish. The ensuing hush was deafening. Uncle Gary was frowning, Aunt Linda was scandalized, and my mother was about to cry. Dad refused to look into my eyes as he sat there with his arms folded. Mom finally said something. Sarah, we just don't understand why you're acting like this. This isn't like you. That was it. The last straw. I didn't wait for an answer before saying, this is me, Mom. I'm just not the doormat you've gotten used to. With a gratifying thump, I closed my laptop after selecting Leave Meeting. The text began right away. Mother. You didn't have to humiliate us like that. Sarah said, we were trying to have a conversation. Mark said, you've changed. I hope you're happy leaving your family behind. Aunt Linda said, I can't believe how disrespectful you were to your parents. I disregarded them all. I no longer owed them an explanation. But despite my sense of justification, I was powerless to stop the guilt from eating at me. I had always been the good girl, the responsible daughter who never got into trouble, growing up. It felt strange to stand up for myself, like if I were violating some holy family law. I sat with a glass of wine on my couch that evening and tried to take it all in. I became increasingly aware that this was about more than just money and space as I gave it more attention. It has to do with control. My family had depended on me for years, thinking I would always be compliant. They turned against me as soon as I left that position. I have no regrets about my remarks throughout the meeting. It was the first honest thing I had said to them in years, if anything. I was aware that the worst was yet to come. My family was not going to silently give up. They had only barely begun. I hoped things would settle down after the family gathering. Perhaps I was naive, but I believed that perhaps the surprise of my at last defending myself would cause them to back off, give me room, give themselves time to think. I was mistaken. My refusal to back down simply made things more heated, if anything. I felt as though I had prodded the bear, and it was now using all of its strength to claw back. Boundaries were not something my family respected. They viewed them as obstacles to be surmounted. The attempts to pull me back into the fold were blatantly intrusive, the manipulation became more daring, and the guilt trips became more acute. It took place a few days following the family gathering. My coworker Sam stopped by my office as I was finishing up a customer report. Hey, Sarah, some woman called reception asking for you and said she was your mom. She left a message with Emily, but I think you should hear it. I felt sick to my stomach. Emily gave me a sticky note while wearing a perplexed expression, and I followed him to reception. The message said, this is Sarah's mother, Nancy Evans. We're going through a difficult moment, and I need to talk to her about some pressing family issues that may be interfering with her ability to concentrate at work. Please urge her to take the initiative. Thank you. I froze, looking at the message as if it were about to burn in my palms. My mother had contacted my place of employment. My workplace, not to see how I was doing, nor because of an emergency, but to leave a note implying that I wasn't doing my share to support the family. I was embarrassed, enraged. I crumpled up the message, my face burning. Sam smiled awkwardly at me. Everything okay? I gave a rigid nod. Yeah, it's fine, just family stuff. However, it wasn't good. As soon as I got home that night, I called my mother. Why would you call my work, Mom? That's completely out of line. She sounded angry, as if I were the one who was being unfair. I had to get your attention somehow. You're not listening to us, Sarah. Maybe hearing it from someone at work will help you see how serious this is. What I was hearing was unbelievable. My work has nothing to do with you or Mark or your bills. You can't drag my professional life into this. Mom didn't think twice. We're your family. We come first. You need to start acting like it. No, I firmly answered. I don't. I need you to respect my boundaries, and I need you to leave my job out of this. Limits? She laughed. This isn't about boundaries, Sarah. This is about family loyalty. You're abandoning us and you don't even see it. I ended the call. Arguments were pointless. Nothing I said would convince my mother to change her story because she was so engrossed in it. When I woke up the following day, I was inundated with alerts. I knew who it was without even looking at my phone. My brother Mark had indeed made a Facebook post. His initial post was ambiguous, just enough to evoke pity without providing specifics. Mark Evans. You discover your true family during difficult times. When it's inconvenient for them, some people lose track of their origins. Even though we're trying our hardest, it's difficult when some folks refuse to help. The comments came flooding in. Mark, keep going, you're capable. Family is the most important thing. One day, whoever is disappointing you will come to repent it. Toxic people are not necessary in your life. Pay attention to your lovely family. But the best part was when Mark himself sent out a direct message. Mark, Jason is constantly inquiring as to why you no longer come. Are you okay with me telling him that his aunt doesn't give a damn about him? I sat there looking at my phone, feeling both angry and sad. Knowing how much I loved Mark's children, I detested the way he used them as a weapon against me. However, I was also aware that this was typical Mark behavior: play the victim, elicit pity, and paint me as the bad guy. I declined to respond. I refused to play his game. My parents were bound to try something different eventually. It was to be anticipated. I was enjoying some rare quiet time that Saturday morning while drinking coffee when someone knocked on my door. As I looked through the peephole, my heart fell. There they were, Dad and Mom, standing on my porch, Mom holding a manila envelope. I contemplated not responding. I knew they wouldn't go, but I might have acted as though I wasn't home. I inhaled deeply before opening the door. I said, "What are you doing here?" Without even waiting for an invitation, Mom took action. Dad followed her as she pushed past me. As though they owned the place, they took a seat on my couch, and Mom took out the folder. "We need to talk about finances," she continued, laying out receipts and bills on my coffee table. I gave my temples a rub. "Mom, we've been through this? I'm not paying for a house I don't live in anymore." With a stern voice, Dad said, "Sarah, you don't understand. We're struggling. Mark's struggling. The roof needs to be fixed before winter, and there are school fees for Jason and Liam. It's not just about you." I exploded. "It's always about me, Dad. It's about what I can give, what I can pay for, what sacrifices I can make to keep everyone else comfortable. Well, I'm done. I'm not your ATM, and I'm not responsible for Mark's problems. We're not asking for much, Sarah. Just $2,000 a month to help with the basics. Is that really so unreasonable?" Mom shot back, her voice cracking. Stunned, I gazed at her. "You think $2,000 a month is not much? Are you hearing yourself right now?" From there, the discussion took a turn for the worse. They always responded with blame and guilt whenever I attempted to defend my position. "After everything we've done for you, family is supposed to help each other. Mark has kids to think about. Sarah, you don't understand because you're single." I had finally had enough. I got up and gestured toward the door. "You need to leave." Mom looked at me as if I had given her a slap. "Sarah." They gathered their belongings and departed, slamming the door behind them, but Dad murmured something under his breath now. I collapsed onto the couch once they were gone, feeling as though I had just finished a marathon. My chest felt constricted, and my head was thumping. I kept thinking about the dispute, my dad's disappointment, my mom's tears, and how I felt like I was failing them. But I knew in my heart that I wasn't. I was simply worn out. I'm sick of having to make repairs all the time. I'm fed up with being the good daughter who gave up everything for different people. I was in a trance for the remainder of the day, oscillating between melancholy and anger. I was starting to feel the effects of the pressure, guilt, and relentless manipulation. I understood for the first time that this was more than a passing dispute. Unless I broke it, this loop would continue indefinitely. I vowed to myself as I laid in bed that night, I would not allow them to pull me back in. I would not back down no matter how much they tried to guilt me or how hard they pushed me. Stopping being their crotch was something I owed to myself. But they weren't finished yet, as I would soon discover. By no means. Upon my parents' unexpected arrival and their ridiculous demand for $2,000 per month, I believed I had seen every trick in the book. I believed I was at last ready for their guilt trips and emotional blackmail. I convinced myself that if I stood my ground, they would back off. Those who thrive on control, however, have a tendency to persevere. They get more intense. The following week felt like a pressure cooker. In little time at all, my parents quickly spread the word about their egotistical daughter leaving them when they needed her most. It wasn't until I began receiving calls and texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years that I realized how far they had gone. First, it was my Uncle Gary once more, who always managed to keep the peace in the family. "Uncle Gary," he said. "Sarah, your mom called me crying. She's heartbroken about everything that's happening. I get that you're upset, but can't you just compromise a little? Family is more important than pride. I tightened my jaw as I gazed at my phone. How did pride enter into this? Was it prideful to spend half the month living out of a suitcase and not want to pay someone else's mortgage? My cousin Rachel, who enjoys pushing her nose where it doesn't belong, then sent me a note. Rachel, I don't mean to be impolite, but this is a little ridiculous. Are you simply allowing your brother and his children to suffer, Sarah? It's chilly. I didn't believe you were that way. Whatever the truth, my parents had created their own version of events, making me the bad guy, the one who had deserted her family, the one who was more concerned with money than her sad brother and his helpless kids, and they made me the black sheep overnight, and it worked. Naturally, my brother Mark seized the opportunity to stoke the fires, posting more frequently and sharply on social media. Some people say they care about family, but when times get tough, they're nowhere to be found, Mark wrote on Facebook. Even if it means bearing this burden alone, I'll stop at nothing to ensure my children are happy. My phone buzzed with a notice from a group chat that my cousins and I were sharing, and I chose to ignore it until Rachel shared a screenshot of Mark's most recent message, adding, "Yikes, he's talking about you, isn't he?" His friends and random acquaintances flooded the comments with sympathy and encouragement, but no one knew the truth, and Mark didn't care. The humiliation was unbearable to me. Mark knew exactly what he was doing, portraying himself as the father who never gives up, the struggling hero, and me as the cold-hearted, self-centered sister who refused to help. My mother crossed another line just when I thought things couldn't get any worse. On Tuesday morning, I was in the middle of a conference call when my employer, Tom, knocked on my office door. Tom was uneasy. "May I speak with you for a moment, Sarah?" Dread gripped my gut as I nodded and muted my phone, and Tom shut the door behind him and took a seat across from me. "Your mom called the office again," he added with care. "She didn't speak to me directly, but she left a message with reception." My face flushed with shame. "I'm really sorry. I'll take care of it." "It's okay," Tom said, raising his hand. "Family matters come up. I wanted to make sure that everything was well. Please let me know if you require time off for whatever reason." I answered sharply, "There's nothing going on." And I detested the fact that my mother had brought my work life into her mess. "I'll make sure it doesn't happen again," I continued. My work was the one place I'd managed to keep apart from my family's craziness, and now she was invading it too. Tom nodded and walked away, but the damage was done. I felt ashamed and remained at my desk for a long time, staring blankly at my computer screen. How did she? My parents were trying harder, my brother was using his children as weapons, and the rest of the family had taken sides. By the end of the week, I was emotionally spent. The texts, phone calls, and gossip felt unrelenting, and I couldn't go a day without someone attempting to manipulate or guilt-trip me back into submission. I had just finished cleaning my apartment on a Saturday afternoon when I heard a knock on the door. I knew immediately who it was without even looking through the peephole, so I opened it to find Mark standing there with his arms crossed and a frown on his face. This was the last straw. "What are you doing here, Mark?" I inquired. He didn't waste time making small talk. "Sarah, we must speak. This has continued for too long." I stopped the doorway by crossing my arms. "No, Mark, there's no need for conversation. You must go." He raised his voice and screamed, "You don't get to just walk away from your family." Jason and Liam couldn't comprehend why their aunt no longer cared about them. "Mom and Dad are losing their hearts because of you. You're shattering mine." Something broke inside of me. "I'm not the one who left, Mark. You did that because you believed that I owed you something simply because I put in more effort and made wiser decisions, and that I should clean up your mess. I finished carrying you." For once, Mark had no rebuttal and appeared astonished, as if no one had ever spoken to him in that manner. "Go home, Mark," I murmured softly. "Nurse your own family. I'm finished." When I heard his footsteps departing, I felt a wave of tiredness slam over me. I stood there trembling for a second, half expecting him to knock again or yell through the door, but he didn't. My family wasn't just requesting assistance, they felt entitled to it. My money, my time, my life, and when I dared to refuse, they made it their mission to punish me for it. I sat on my couch that night and stared at the wall, thinking about everything that had happened over the past few months, including the eviction from my basement suite, the incessant guilt trips, the invasion of my workplace, and the lies Mark spread online. At that moment, I understood that I had two options. I could either walk away from this losing war or continue to fight it. One of the few people who had supported me during this ordeal was my buddy Jessica, whom I called the following morning. "Jess, I'm moving," I declared. "Where are you moving?" "I'm not sure yet. Outside the state. A long way off." I require a new beginning. Without hesitation, Jessica said. Good. You're worthy. Sarah, do it for you. I put the pieces in motion over the course of the following 2 weeks, applying for a job transfer within my organization and beginning my search for apartments in Charlotte, North Carolina, a city I had always wanted to visit because it was close enough to provide me with space without making me feel like I was running away. I placed a brief letter on the kitchen table at my previous residence on the day I packed up my car and left Columbus, but I kept it a secret from both Mark and my parents. I can't continue living this way, even though I love you. One day, I hope you'll understand. I don't know if they ever will. As I drove down the highway toward Charlotte, I experienced a strange range of emotions, including relief, anger for the way my family treated me, and grief for the family I had to leave behind. For the first time in years, I felt free. Free from obligations that weren't mine, free from guilt, and free to start over. The kilometers behind me made it clear to me that I was choosing myself, and for once, that was sufficient rather than fleeing.